in the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Welcome back to the Paracast. This week we've got a really fascinating, interesting direction for the show. Unlike a lot of other shows where they just interview the standard guests or write books or give lectures, occasionally we find a worthy person, and there are a lot of them, in our forums at forum.theparacast.com. Very knowledgeable people participate there, and occasionally we find one or two to bring on a show. You're like Gogs Mackay comes on occasionally, and we met him through the forums, and he's always been a great addition. We've had other forum members, and we'll tell you about this one a little bit later. In any case, so I know that our session with David Marler on triangular UFOs has sparked all sorts of discussions. Unfortunately, not all those discussions have been necessarily just back and forth about what he said. Some people kind of got out of shape over it. But it's interesting how many different directions that discussion has taken, Chris.
Yeah, well, someone like David Marler, who is one of our kind of unsung hero researchers digging away in the trenches, has stated some absolutes that people, were taking exception to, and that's understandable. I think in this realm, nothing is absolute. There's no one-size-fits-all answer for any of these mysteries, and you really have to be careful how you couch your particular conclusions, because there's always going to be probably more people that will take exception to that conclusion than there are people that will, support your particular point of view. So, that's what makes this particular Paracast forum so healthy, invigorating, and intellectually stimulating. I really, I've been enjoying the back and forth on his appearance, on all our guests' appearance. I think generally we have some very insightful posters, and today we have one of our most insightful posters. One of my favorite forum participants is going to be with us today, and we'll ask him about how he responded to David Marler's appearance and other guests that we've had, including Greg Bishop.
Now, the one thing, of course, about triangular UFOs is that, unlike lights in the sky, we're talking about objects in the sky with a distinctive shape. And that leads one to think of something that it's real, it's solid, it's an actual aircraft. That's the one thing. The second thing is the concerns over whether maybe some level of those reports, maybe beginning in the 80s, could have represented test aircraft of some sort, as separated from a lot of other cases, which are obviously not ours unless we were flying things around in the early 20th century or something, or even before. But that's the one thing that is interesting. Chris, what's your take about the possibility that we have some ringers there, maybe test aircraft?
I think that there's a very strong possibility that, the defense industrial complex has devised lighter-than-air platforms that could be quite substantial in terms of their size. I don't think that these types of craft, which are stealth craft basically, are obviously going to be darting off at impossible speeds, making right-angle turns, the types of maneuvers that some sightings of what appear to be triangular craft have been reported making. So I think even though there is that real strong possibility that we do have lighter-than-air stealth platforms, I don't think that they come close to explaining away all the events that have been reported, including some of the Belgian sightings. The Phoenix Lights could possibly have been something like that, although the size would kind of dissuade me from thinking that we have anything that's a mile in size. I mean, if we do, it'd be really tough to even test something like that, let alone whip it out and fly it over, the two largest cities in Arizona, the fifth largest city in North America. So, it's that's why his book is so good, because he goes into a lot of nuances about how these craft are described. The Hudson Valley sightings in the 80s, I think, is a real good example of possibly multiple types of craft with that triangular configuration that were spotted by many hundreds, if not thousands, of witnesses.
Of course, we have to remember that we exclude, in talking about the Hudson Valley sightings, one of the authors of Night Siege, for obvious reasons. But since there were two worthy authors in that book, a lot of it has to be taken seriously.
Plus, I lived there when this was going on, and I remember a friend of mine's father was driving down the Taconic Parkway and saw one of these objects and mentioned it to the family. And of course, I would see newspaper reports about these craft a number of times. Some college buddies and girlfriends and stuff, and I went up to Untermeyer Park up in Yonkers with a commanding view of the Hudson River there from the cliffs. And because there had been sightings reported in the area the night before, we thought maybe we would get lucky and get a repeat performance. Somebody even suggested, if I remember correctly, drawing one of those signs like in Close Encounters that said "Stop and be friendly." But we ended up just kind of getting bored and going off and doing something else. So unfortunately, I was not. I can't count myself among the many witnesses that had experiences during that time period there. But there was something flying around there. There's no question about it. There was too many people were spotting it, too many law enforcement officials. There were some radar reports. The reports that I found most compelling were the reports that seemed to center around the Indian Point nuclear plant, which is north of New York City, right on the Hudson. And the third author of the Night Siege book, Philip Brogno, claimed that at one point security personnel saw grays inside the containment facility and all that. And, I'm not really quite sure what to make of that. Now that we know about some of his confabulations, it would be tough to take that particular account at face value. But living right there during that time period, I can assure everyone that there was something flying around, if not multiple things flying around there. And there's a possibility that it could have been some sort of stealth, very human technology, stealth style technology, because very few of these reports reported any sort of non-ballistic motion or impossible speeds or that sort of thing, if memory serves me correct.
Of course, I suppose one of the things we can consider here is whether the military was staging some sort of experimentation in their various activities in that particular area.
Well, yeah, there's some rationale behind that. I mean, I could see tweaking security procedures and eliciting some sort of response from security personnel around plants like that. They could have been gauging the reaction of local officials and that sort of thing. I think that sort of activity goes on a lot. Based on my work in the San Luis Valley, I have a sense that if the government is involved in clandestinely flying, let's say exotic technology or black project craft around particular areas, maybe it's done to gauge the response on the population, on the security, law enforcement personnel, and that sort of thing.
And of course, to use that famous term, this gives them a level of plausible deniability. After all, there are no such things as UFOs. Never happen. Nothing is going on. Nothing to worry about. Therefore, you might as well ignore it.
Yeah.
So let's get on to our special guest this week. Now, as we've mentioned, we've got some positively brilliant people who hang out in the forums at forum.theparacast.com. Positively brilliant, and perhaps one of the most intelligent and prolific posters is a fellow who calls himself Burnt State. Don't know which state, New York, Illinois. Don't know which state, or state of confusion. No, I don't think so. Of course, you wonder what other names this guy could have picked.
Yeah. Burnt Toast, maybe, but I don't know. Burnt State.
I suppose we'll find out the whys and wherefores as to how he picked that name. But once again, he is extremely knowledgeable about all things paranormal, and you're really going to want to hear from him. So coming up, without further ado, we're going to present Burnt State, making his first appearance on the show. You're on with Gene and Chris. You're in
The Paracast.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and the Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Talk to a sales rep at iWeb.com. Use the promo code TechNightOwl for a special discount.
Hi, John Hubner from Midas Resources. Are you tired of watching your hard-earned assets dwindle away? As government spending is out of hand and the Federal Reserve is creating in excess of $20 billion a week, are you tired of stockbrokers gambling away your hard-earned money? Is this market a setup for a crash greater than 1987? Too many of today's policies resemble those that led to the collapse of 1929. This is John Hubner, and that was me in 2007. And we all know what happened when the subprime credit bubble burst. By March 2009, the dollar lost 50% of its value. The entire U.S. banking system was on the verge of collapsing. Like all financial problems of the past, is history about to repeat itself? Call me, John Hubner, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 129, before it's too late to protect yourself. Will the oncoming catastrophe take all private IRAs, 401ks with it? There is a way to protect your hard-earned assets. Call me, John Hubner, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 129.
We live in a complicated society. Stressful issues are always popping up. Have you ever been treated unfairly by someone? Have you ever been overcharged for a repair? Have you ever signed a contract or a document? Worried about identity theft? How many times have you been in those unique situations where you just wanted to call an attorney to find out if you're right or wrong, or what your legal rights are? But every time you think about calling an attorney, what do you think about first? That's right. Who do you call, and how much will it cost? Our friends at Legal Shield have found a solution. With a nationwide network of 6,900 attorneys who average over 19 years of experience, Legal Shield's law firms take over 40,000 calls per week helping their members. For less than $20 per month, you can have access to Legal Shield on everything from the trivial to the traumatic. Let Legal Shield stand up for your rights at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com. Or call 855-340-SAVE, 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
You're fired. According to the Small Business Administration, 75% of small businesses plan to eliminate jobs or reduce workers' hours to part-time. You're fired. According to Gallup, the unemployment rate recently jumped to nearly 9%, and the underemployment rate hit a staggering 17.9%. You're fired. 1 out of 3 young adults and 1 out of 2 recent college graduates are underemployed. Hello, I'm Keith Abel, a pharmacist and a home business entrepreneur. In 2011, I became one of those statistics myself. Instead of looking for another job in corporate America, I joined Dr. Joel Wallach, the Dead Doctors Don't Lie guy. We're creating steady incomes for ourselves and would like to show you how to do the same. If you want to supplement your current income, replace your income, so you don't have to become one of the statistics, then give me a call toll-free at 866-257-3105, 866-257-3105. You're fired. Don't wait till you hear those words. Start creating an extra income today. 866-257-3105.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Don't forget to visit plus.theparacast.com. That's plus.theparacast.com. There you'll learn about our special premium service where you get an ad-free version of the Paracast and the After the Paracast podcast. Plus.theparacast.com. We've got a gentleman here who deserves a lot of praise because he's one of our most prolific posters at our forums at forum.theparacast.com. He engages in all sorts of paranormal discussions, and now he's joining us. His name is Burnt State, and that's the name he'll go by, except that we will occasionally talk to him with his real name, which is Robert. Burnt State, we're so glad to have you on the show.
Yes, sir.
The first and most obvious question I can ask is why? do you call yourself Burnt State?
Well, I think on one hand, it celebrates a bit of my own kind of anti-government stance, I guess I would say, in terms of, razing things to the ground. But really, it's not about that kind of anarchist perspective. It's actually, and this is kind of gives things away, it's a bit of a translation of my original name in German. And I found out through actually a forum member online who questioned me about my handle. And I had to research it. And when I researched it, I found out that I come from a long line of arsonists, but very specific arsonists. What we did was, following the plague, we would go to parts of infested cities and we would burn everything to the ground so we could actually start all over again. So in that way, I kind of like that handle as something that's tied to that idea of creation and destruction and those kind of endless cycles of that.
Burning off the dross.
That's right.
In the alchemical fashion. But, the only time I've ever heard the term burnt state was after, when I was in high school, back in my psychotropic days, that after a particularly eventful weekend, we'd all kind of wander around bumping into walls the following Monday in a burnt state.
Yes, indeed. I know that.
Crispy.
So based on that, can we assume that you have from time to time decided to partake of certain substances that we will not name specifically?
I have on occasion. I try to leave that part of my life behind now. I have other responsibilities.
And we assume those responsibilities are?
It's a wife and kids and a dog, and they all need me. They all need me. They need me preferably to cook for them is the most important part. So tonight they're flying solo.
Yeah. They need you well done. or done enough, but not burnt.
That's correct. My wife tells me that right now, where I stand, the insurance money is not enough. I'm actually worth more alive than dead, but I think I've got limited time on that offer.
Now, obviously, you don't spend your time writing forum posts on the Paracast forums, although you spend a lot of time doing it. So what do you actually do in civilian life?
Yeah, it's a totally different scene altogether. I am a teacher of children, and I consume my time really trying to think of ways that I can engage youth to express themselves, put their voice out there, be more independent in an age of digital copycatting and yik-yakking. I would really like to see kids be able to express themselves in a way that's unencumbered from the mediated reality that they live in. So that's my primary goal as an educator.
So what grades do you actually teach?
I'm all over the map in high school, but primarily I do upper band classes. I used to be a Comtech teacher, and then I was an English teacher, and now I'm a leadership teacher, and I kind of try to merge all of those different fields together to get kids to create product and engage their community and engage ideas that matter to them, and try to help them out with some of the social ills that they face in this increasingly stressful era that they live in.
You're quite a writer, so the English part really comes across on the forum. Some of your posts are just absolutely dazzling, and I'm not blowing smoke at you here. I really have learned a lot by reading your posts, and you have a way, for people who aren't familiar with the Paracast forum. Robert has a way of drilling down on subjects and opening up doors that I normally wouldn't go through, and give me things to really sink my teeth into and think about that I normally wouldn't have unless I'd read your post. And that's one of the reasons why we got you on the show, because of your amazing insight. You really do have an analytical sense about you that allows the subject in question to really blossom. And I think a lot of people really appreciate that, as it shows your likes way outnumber your posts, which is, I think, a good way to gauge a person's impact on a forum, is to look how many likes they've received versus how many posts. And you've got several hundred more than likes than you do posts, which is a good sign in my book.
Now, Chris and I and everybody else who's interested in the paranormal have all gone through this. At some point in your life as a wee lad, what got you interested in looking after the paranormal rather than playing baseball, football, watching cartoons on TV, whatever?
No, I think it happens pretty early on in a young boy's life, when you're trolling through the library and you're done with the Hardy Boys collection, and your mind turns to Bradbury and Serling and Asimov, and before you know it, you're away to the races and reading about the paranormal. And I scouted through all the libraries in my town to cover every single Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, UFO, possession, text that I could find. My brain was pretty turned on to altered realities early on, and that kind of culminated early on in my childhood with a pretty interesting UFO sequence that unfolded, and I think those things really consolidated, early on. That's when it happens.
Now, I wasn't so lucky in my life about having a UFO sighting. Chris did, but can you tell us about your sighting? Give us the details.
It's a pretty interesting one, and it's me on an ice rink in my neighborhood, where in the center of the block, in a very, very large field, I would say maybe 100, 200 square meters, there was a rink that was made at night. We were out there skating, myself, my buddy, and his babysitter's daughter. Yeah, she was an older gal in her, I think, early teens, and we would have been maybe 10 or 11. The three of us were on the rink playing 2-on-1 shinny up against each other. And when it was 2-on-1 against my friend, he ran off inside, and it was just the babysitter's daughter and I. And I looked at her. She had stepped on the puck and couldn't hit it anymore. I looked at her. Her neck was craned up to the sky. It was a crystal clear night, beautiful stars out. And there, up in the sky, approaching us, were two classical flying saucers. They seemed to be slightly illuminated. They looked metal. They had a ring of lights around them. One seemed to be paused a little further in the field up in the air, and the other one was descending towards us. And when I saw that, immediately in my brain, something clicked off and said, uh-oh, here it is. I know what's going to be happening. We're going to get abducted. And that didn't happen. And I watched this ship come closer to us, and then it seemed to descend towards the power lines that ran along the back of the houses that bordered the ice rink. And then that ship slowly eased its way through the backyards, and it paused above another friend's house by a tree and above their garage roof. And it hovered there for a bit. And then it went up and joined the other one. The two of them went further down a couple of blocks and seemed to hover up over my favorite corner store. They stayed there. The whole experience was maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. And then the two of them just blasted off into space and looked like stars as they were leaving and just disappeared into the night sky.
This is just the beginning. We've got a lot more to come with our guest, Burnt State, joining Gene and Chris. You're in
The Paracast.
You're listening to GCN, proudly sponsored by UnseenNow.com. Lock down your digital life at UnseenNow.com. This is GCN.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Freudian phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
Did you know by age 50, half of all men have an enlarged prostate? This means more urges to urinate, longer bathroom trips, waking at night to urinate, or issues with sex. If this sounds familiar, call us now, because we're shipping free bottles of Super Beta Prostate to listeners of this station. Super Beta Prostate is a non-prescription formula guaranteed to reduce the symptoms of your enlarged prostate. It's yours free. Pay only shipping and handling. Just call 1-800-205-8110. In clinical trials, the ingredient in Super Beta Prostate was shown to reduce urges to urinate, improve bladder emptying, reduce waking at night to urinate, and improve quality of life. This Super Beta Prostate free offer is for listeners of this station, but it won't last. Don't wait. Just call 1-800-205-8110. That's 1-800-205-8110. Call 1-800-205-8110.
We all have our own idea about what being safe and secure means. The door's locked, bills are paid, you've got a job that keeps the lights on, and a home to call your own. But what happens when Mother Nature throws a curveball?
telling you to take cover.
Are you prepared to live without electricity or passable roads for weeks at a time? Do you even have a plan B? If you do, are you willing to bet your life on it?
Children left with no homes.
And no one's coming to help them.
The first step towards self-reliance in the face of disaster is a visit to mypatriotsupply.com. There you'll find the absolute best prices on storable foods, non-GMO seeds, emergency water filtration devices, and so much more. All orders over $49 qualify for free shipping in the lower 48 states. Call 866-229-0927. That's 866-229-0927 and speak to one of our preparedness advisors today, or visit us at mypatriotsupply.com. Remember, before it's time to survive, it's time to prepare.
Hey, guess what? They've got some great deals for Valentine's Day at guns80.com. They're calling it the Sweetheart Special. Guns80.com has lowered the price way down to $400 up until Valentine's Day. Order your Ghost AR-15 now. Tell your sweetheart that this is the right gift at the right time. Buy one for yourself. Buy one for your sweetheart, too. Your sweetheart will thank you for being so tuned into his or her needs. Get a brand new Ghost AR-15 right now for $400. Heck, buy two. His and hers. Go to guns80.com or call and ask for the sweetheart deal. Love is in the air at guns80.com. Call now, 844-2GUNS80. That's 844-248-6780. It's a sweetheart of a deal. Actually, it's a steal at $400, so call guns80.com at 844-2GUNS80, but hurry, supplies are limited. Call 844-2GUNS80 or get your Ghost AR-15 today at guns80.com on the web.
This is Robert Hastings, author of UFOs and Nukes, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
This week on the Paracast, we're featuring one of our most prolific forum posters, none other than Brandstetter. And he's telling us about his first sighting of a UFO. Did this, Robert, pretty much cement your ongoing interest in the paranormal?
It really did, but I think what cemented it even more was what happened the following spring, because the following spring we were in the backyard where that UFO had hovered over my other friend's house, and we were going into his house. It was actually his aunt's house there, and she didn't trust him with keys into the house. I think we were only in grade 4, grade 5 at the time, and so we climbed a ladder to get into the second floor of his house. And when we climbed that ladder, we looked out across. He stopped. And he says, holy, look at that. And he was looking over to the garage where that UFO had hovered. And there I was looking over it, and it all, kind of flooded back in some ways, where there, the top part of the tree that was near there was burnt in a radial arc on the portion of the garage. All the shingles had been burnt and upturned. And I remember my friend saying, my uncle is going to be so pissed. He had just reshingled that roof, and look at that, what happened? Now, when we had told the UFO story to our friends when that happened that previous winter, everybody laughed, mocked us. My parents dismissed us. It was kind of a done deal. But it all came flooding back inside of that moment and really consolidated that something, in fact, really was there. And I think that trace evidence piece, that's the part that really locked into my brain and kind of logged me on that summer. My friend and I got out walkie-talkies, and we went UFO hunting through the entire city.
Now, this particular episode, by any chance, did it happen to make the newspapers?
I scoured through newspapers all through the next week in shock that how could there not be anything there printed about this obvious, amazing, incredible event, and was entirely dismayed that there was absolutely nothing there at all. And of course, we were young kids. We didn't talk to adults other than our parents, so there really wasn't anybody to confirm or talk to or call the police that, we were grade 4, grade 5 kids there. My mother and father kind of dismissed the event altogether, though my mother remembered very well my retelling of it, because she reminded me of it about 15 years later, which was another very interesting event connected to that incident, because when we were talking about UFOs casually at dinner table over a Christmas meal, and my mother piped up and says, well, Robert, you had a UFO experience. And I'll be honest, up to that point in time, that entire incident, I guess, for some reason had been just switched off, or my brain had decided not to accept it anymore and not dwell on it. And as soon as she said that, the entire incident from start to finish all came back to me again, and with great immediacy, which was quite startling, actually.
So was that an indication, after all, that your parents may have really taken all this quite seriously?
No, I thought she had dismissed it entirely, because I remember I came running in the house at the same time my father had, and he had been at the corner store, and I was berating him, how could you not see these ships? They were floating right above you. So yeah, it was kind of, it had been dismissed. It got dismissed by my peers, and I think dismissed in general, and I think my own brain just dismissed it really for a good period of time. And I find it interesting every so many decades that something happens that brings that case back. In university, I was reading Passport to Magonia, and for whatever reason in my early 40s, it was me thinking about that incident, which led me to the Paracast and other kind of paranormal shows, and has kind of launched this most recent spate of investigation and curiosity for myself in the field.
So certainly you were engaging in a pretty wide search about UFOs, but did you bring that out in public, maybe into the classroom, that you had any abiding interest in the subject?
It really was a search. I again, for whatever reason, I was talking about the UFO experience on rare occasions. I would mention it in one of my classes, just as a fun way to kind of close the course off. And I would tell the story, and kids would be enthralled and amazed. And I guess I had started thinking about it a little bit more and wanting to delve into it. And it was the age of the podcast. Somebody had given me an iPhone, and I started trolling around looking to see what I could find. And I thankfully stumbled into your show when you and Biedny were on a roll right in the early periods of it. And very shortly after that, I became a lurker on the forum and started reading some of the amazing material that was being posted by people. And I think that was the main catalyst that has brought me here to maybe this moment and talking to the two of you, because my interest has been reactivated in a way I wouldn't say it's unhealthy, but wow, it consumes a lot of my time, unpaid time.
So as a family man, how does your family react to your preoccupation with these subjects?
My daughter mocks me a little bit on it. My wife is slightly annoyed because there is other work I'm supposed to be doing that could be bringing money into the household that I keep delaying. And so that's not a popular piece there. So I don't talk a lot about it. And I'll be honest, the way I raised both my children was not to believe in unreal things such as Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or any of that stuff. And my daughter killed the Easter Bunny when she was 3 years old. I tried to explain to her the reason why her Christmas chocolate went missing was that the Easter Bunny would take it, recycle it, and then give it back come Easter. And she turned on me at the age of 3 and said, "Dad, you know and I know there is no such thing as the Easter Bunny here on this earth." And she said it with such incredible conviction. I was like, wow, I've really raised a rationalist here.
Oh, that's funny.
She is now the ripe age of 13, has discovered makeup, is managing a very interesting and creative life herself online, counting her creative Tumblr followers. She does a lot of Photoshop and artwork herself as a creative character and has a pretty good mind on her.
How old is your son?
My son is 11 and is eager and sweet and still a huggable teddy bear who loves having me coach him soccer in the summer.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
I really am. When we have the sex talk, he always says to me, "Dad, I really don't need to know about that sort of stuff right now." I'm like, all right, God bless you, son. Let's keep that going for a while.
But what about the dog?
The dog is a border collie husky that we picked up at the pound because nobody in the family was allergic to it. Both my wife and my son are very allergic to animals. And this husky's double coat doesn't produce allergens, and I had them both rub their face into it. And he has become such an amazing addition into our environment. It's incredible how much emotion an animal can bring into your environment. So he's a real centerpiece for this family.
Of course, in the Steinberg household, we have the one and only teddy bear, and we got him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard all about him.
Before we get too far away from that initial very kind of paradigm-shifting experience that you had when you were a kid, the following spring, what prompted you? One of our questions here from a new sign-up at forum.theparacast.com named Sand, who actually signed up Christmas Eve, wonders what was your compulsion to climb up that ladder and look there for actual physical trace evidence. And my follow-up question would be, did you and your friend mention this to his father and make a point of pointing out that the tree had been impacted and that it appeared a patterning of heat had impacted the brand new shingles?
I think there's something interesting about youth and the adult world. Just to take up the last question first, is that we live in two different spaces. Youth live in a very creative, imaginative, irrational environment. Their brain chemistry is very irrational. And so the idea of the possibilities and potentials of strange things, I think, go hand in hand. Where you become an adult, things start to get a little bit more mundane, rational, and so those conversations don't happen. It was his aunt and uncle's place. His dad was non-existent. His mom was mostly unconscious and usually drunk or sleeping it off on the couch. He was a loner. And as a loner, he was able to, go in and out of his aunt's house. And that time he went in because he didn't have the keys. And so we climbed the ladder. And he liked the idea of breaking into that house. And so we would do that on very rare occasions. And I was really captivated by that poster's question, because I think there is something interesting that's going on, obviously, with the UFO experience that is connected to us, that wants us to pay attention there. And I had asked him to qualify that a little bit more, because I almost feel like in some ways that the UFO piece is almost like a bait, that you're being lured into something. And by climbing up that ladder, we did it by chance. But if we hadn't, we really wouldn't have taken notice, I think, of the shingles or of the tree. As like little kids, you couldn't see up to the top of that roof. The only way we could have had that advantage was climbing up the ladder. And so is that just chance, or is that, something else bringing us there? That's where things start to get a little nebulous and strange, I guess, with this discussion.
More to come with Burnt State, Gene, and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Great minds think alike. The network for the independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network. GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
If the IRS has garnished your paycheck or seized money from your bank account, you need to get professional tax help now. Fast action is required to put a halt to these aggressive IRS collection tactics. You can count on the knowledgeable team of tax professionals at Wall & Associates. With over 30 years of experience, Wall & Associates has settled the tax problems of thousands of taxpayers for a small fraction of what they owed. For a free face-to-face consultation, call 1-800-425-4610 to put a wall between you and the IRS. 1-800-425-4610 or look for us on the web at wallandassociates.net. We solve tax problems. If you hire Wall & Associates today, you'll never have to talk to the IRS again. To stop the levies and seizures today, take action now. Call Wall & Associates at 1-800-425-4610. Wall & Associates, 1-800-425-4610. Based on actual cases, results may vary, not a solicitation for legal services.
This is Holly Thomas, Group Vice President of Cause Marketing for Macy's. Our company is working together with the March of Dimes through March for Babies to raise money and awareness about the serious problem of premature birth in the U.S. That's why Macy's is committed to raising funds through our employees, customers, family, and friends to improve the health of moms and babies everywhere. Won't you please join us in March for Babies? Start a team today at marchforbabies.org.
It's no secret that government and big business buy in bulk and get huge discounts not available to the little guy. Until now. Introducing a breakthrough crowd buying website where people can join together, buy in bulk, and get massive discounts on millions of popular products. It's TogetherSave.com. TogetherSave.com. You can save 20, 30, or even 50% off tablets, smartphones, cars, appliances, textbooks, sports equipment, video games, and much more. All with free delivery. Check it out. TogetherSave.com. Visit now and start group buying today at TogetherSave.com.
We all know that Berkey Water Purification Systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 6 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey water filtration systems. The Berkey Light systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light system today, complete with 2 black Berkey elements for only $231, and the Berkey Guy will ship your order free of charge. With the purchase of a Berkey Light, the Berkey Guy is also offering a set of fluoride and arsenic filters for only $39.99. That's over 30% off the retail price. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at goberkey.com. That's goberkey.com today.
Hi, it's Grant Cameron from presidentialufo.com. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
On the Paracast this week, we're featuring Brandstetter Robert, a very welcome presence on our forums at forum.theparacast.com, where he hangs out. But other than our forums, do you go about anywhere expressing your interest in these subjects?
No, I keep that pretty on the down low. I would say I once last year, and because I'll be honest, I'm actually a pretty skeptical individual when it comes to these pieces. Most of these last 6 years investigating paranormal pieces have been trying to make sense of the things that happened to me at various points in my life and try to understand, are there in fact real mundane physiological, pharmacological explanations for these pieces? And I feel like some of these pieces I've had answers to. So I come across in the classroom as pretty skeptical. And I ran an interesting poll last year with a bunch of students at the end of the semester 2 session. They're heading into summer. And I asked them, which of these paranormal pieces do you take stock in? And I listed a collection from UFOs to ghosts to psychics, Bigfoot, monsters, psychic pieces, all of it. And I was quite surprised. UFOs were way down at the list. They thought that was not really that possible. Bigfoot possibly, but they were all there for the psychic. And you can see how the impact of the media age really does correspond to kids then believing in the things that are popular and presented. And of course, the Long Island Psychic and different kind of popular psychics that you see on TV has had a huge impact. And some kids really got into, intense debate with me just how real they thought those things were, until I kind of pointed out, some of the strategies and techniques perhaps that can be used to trick people into revealing information and then convincing them that in fact, oh no, your mind just been read.
Ah, yes, the reading of the minds.
Shades of the amazing Kreskin.
Something like that. It's just not as incredible as Kreskin could do it, but I think he had some pretty good aids.
Well, how about other experiences, subsequent to that original experience? Have you ever had any potential haunted site experiences or other types of, unusual phenomena that you may have been witness to or privy to?
I would say that perhaps there's maybe 2 or 3 other interesting things. Like as a young child, I had some pretty intense nightmares that included, walking hallucinations, things that I would call even, waking nightmares, where I was it felt like experiences happening to me while I was, awake in the grocery store with my mother, and yet monsters were there and present. So, I remember seeing a Chinese dragon in total neon flames dancing at the end of my father's bed, and I was pointing and staring at it, and of course he was seeing nothing, and I was freaking out altogether. And I think those were perhaps fever-induced or something else was happening. But later on, when I was in high school, I decided for some reason to take up the Ouija board. I really wanted to get into the paranormal piece, hadn't encountered ghosts or anything like that, but I thought this is an avenue. And that produced some very interesting results, actually. And I had to reflect on that really long and hard later on to try to understand what was happening with that experience. There was a group of us that would get together, and Ouija and our contact spirit, very kind of familiar and typical. Our contact spirit was a 7-year-old girl named Heather. She claimed that her father had burnt the house down with all the occupants in it, and could we please somehow help her to be released? And And there was a group of us that Ouija pretty regularly. I kept detailed notes about all of the contacts, what happened, what took place, the differing experiences in it. It culminated in a very dramatic moment, of course, one final night where we were in my basement and we Ouija'd Heather, and Heather suddenly turned very aggressive and vile and claimed that it was, in fact, not Heather all along. It was the father, and he was going to come to kill all of us one by one, and spelled out all of our names, in which order the deaths would take place. And at that final moment, the Ouija planchette kind of flew off the board, and then a door slammed upstairs, and everybody freaked right out. And we went upstairs, and I checked with a hockey stick and all my friends in tow, and we checked every single room in case there was a burglar, and all the doors were closed. No windows were open. There was no draft. Couldn't really figure that out. But that wasn't really the kicker. The kicker was in the middle of our Ouija sessions. I remember going to pick up my girlfriend from the corner store she worked at to do one of our Ouija events after school the one summer. And as I was walking to pick her up, something glinted on the sidewalk that caught my eye, and it was a little gold charm. And I picked up the charm, and the charm was like a little foot, a little gold foot like a mother would wear on her bracelet. And engraved, of course, on that foot was the name Heather. And that, when I look back on that, I think a lot about the Conjuring Philip, episode, and how people can kind of bring things together somehow into reality. And I really do believe that the Ouija board is primarily a co-creation amongst peoples, that peoples are unconsciously doing this together, and they're not aware that they're tipping the table. They're not aware that they're spelling things out. But that foot came from somewhere else. That was a really big oddity. And then another interesting moment was when my father challenged the Ouija and said, I don't believe this Ouija stuff. It's all junk. You tell me, what's your grandmother's birth date? And so knowing that I had no clue about birth dates at all, and I still don't, and I asked the Ouija board, and it spelled out a birth date, and he says, see, there you go, wrong. To which my mother piped up and said, wait a second, that's my mother's birth date. That is his grandmother's birth date. When I continued Ouijing there in front of my dad asked, okay, well, tell me, who's there? Who is this? And it spelled out the name of a coworker. It was a coworker my father had just introduced me to the previous week. He hadn't told me anything about this coworker. He had just started a new life, had all these beautiful aquariums downstairs, had a new wife and kids. But for whatever reason, just a day before I'm Ouijing and the Ouija board is telling me it's my dad's friend, my father tells me he just hanged himself yesterday. And so that was another.
Whoa.
So those two pieces, this idea of kind of knowledge or things coming out of the ether and somehow arriving into our world as concrete, pieces is, I guess it's Jungian on some levels. It certainly points to the fact that perhaps there's something else going on that I can't explain with, rational thoughts. So while I do believe a lot of the stuff that happens on the Ouija are things that happen collectively, I can't really explain those two pieces at all there.
Shades of Carl Jung, boy, I'll tell you, that's a collective unconscious manifesting on some level.
Very much so, isn't it?
So what other things have you done in your long and checkered life?
No, there was one other classic one was I was big on scaring people. I always enjoyed scaring people. And one of my favorite things to do was to go to a graveyard, an old graveyard in the middle of the woods. By a university and these soccer fields. And I brought the Ouija board out and a couple of my friends, and we proceeded to Ouija on top of some of these very old graves. One was a World War I pilot's grave that had fallen over. They had put into concrete to memorialize it. And we were Ouijaing on his grave. And he came on that board and told us to get the heck away from his spot and leave him alone. Now, we continued to Ouija while we were there. And as we were doing that, all of a sudden, standing behind us is a fireman. This fireman is standing there looking at us going, you kids need to get out of here. And I can see over his shoulder, there's a full-on blaze going in the forest just about 50 meters behind him. He says, somebody set a fire in the woods. We know it's not you kids because people in the house saw who it was and where they went, but you need to leave here and get going. Now, I was really taken by that because we were unaware of any of the sound, the flames, the smoke. Yet when he stepped there, it's like we had suddenly come back to that real world place and that we had been transported somewhere. And I think that's a real common experience. And I think that experience is something that is also a co-creation in some ways, that people can get together and experience some very strange things together that perhaps can transport them to other places, have very shared surreal experiences. I'm not too sure what that's all about, but it definitely happened to us that time. And And that was kind of the end of the Ouija piece for me. Like after that night when we got threatened that nobody else wanted to play anymore with me. And I pretty much gave it up, even though I had designed and painted my own Ouija board. It was quite elaborate, made a large circular one that didn't really work too well with the planchette because of the excess of heavy paint I put on it. But that kind of ended, that Ouija piece. And it's not something, my kids joke around and they play with the Ouija board every now and then, but I'll be honest, I don't encourage it at all. I think some of these investigations can actually destabilize you.
Kind of makes me think of the reflective nature of the UFO phenomenon and other paranormal events.
Well, I think we've heard on the Paracast many times this idea that if you stare too deeply into something, it can start staring back at you. I know it's a famous quote, and I worry about that when I read some of the instances and cases, especially when you look at case studies around abduction pieces, and you can see how people have perhaps bypassed some of their normal critical thinking skills. I'll give an example. I had a phone call one day that came from a former student's father, wanted to talk to me. And I was, okay, so what's this about? How can I help you, sir? And he said, you taught my daughter creative writing. She really had a great time in your class, but she told me that you had mentioned something about UFOs and that you had told a story. Now, he proceeded to tell me that he was a science teacher, a biology teacher, had been teaching for a very long time, and that he had been spending a lot of time on, I think it was a Raelian site, or maybe it was the Zeta Reticula site, and he wanted me to go look at it because he felt he had tested it all scientifically and it all made total and absolute sense to him, and that I should really pay attention to some of that stuff, and that he wanted to get together. Now, I'll be honest, I never called him again. I took a look at what was on that site and saw that was complete junk and bunk that was there, and I'm very concerned that a lot of people actually spend time participating in things that in fact are very unreal, and I think on some levels perhaps are even unhealthy.
We've got a lot more to come with Burnt State. With Gene and Chris, you're in the Paracast.
You're listening to GCN, proudly sponsored by UnseenNow.com. Lock down your digital life at UnseenNow.com. This is GCN.
This is Dan Pilla. Do you owe the IRS money you can't pay? Are tax debts crippling you? I've defended people from the IRS for over 30 years. I've helped thousands, and I can help you too. I wrote the book on IRS settlement, and I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a hopeless case. Call 800-34-NO-TAX to finally get free of IRS debt. With the IRS's new programs, there's never been a better time to solve your problem. Call 800-34-NO-TAX. That's 800-34-NO-TAX, or my website, danpilla.com.
We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Hi, Ted Anderson. I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
This alert just came in. This special announcement is for business owners and leaders of organizations who've been waiting for the right time to build. General Steel has made it impossible to wait any longer with rock-bottom prices that could save you thousands. That's right, General Steel, America's leader in pre-engineered structures, is offering buildings at prices you will never see again. Don't miss these prices. A 50 by 100 for $35,000. You heard right. That's 5,000 square feet for $35,000. Manufacturers, if you need a larger building, try a 100 by 100 commercial building for $129,000. You can't afford to rent with these prices. Imagine a 70 by 100-foot church building for under $69,000. With the economy improving and interest rates still at historic lows, you can't afford to wait. So call 866-91-STEEL. Lock in your price now. Call 866-91-STEEL. That's 866-917-8335.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
With Gene and Chris in the Paracast, we're featuring Burnt State, one of our best forum posters at forum.theparacast.com. Check it out and learn more about it. Also, check out plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com, where you can sign up for a premium package, get an ad-free version of the show, the After the Paracast podcast, with more to come. Chris?
Hey, I found a guy executed gangland style, just, I don't know, less than 100 feet from my house in the Bronx in New York, right after I moved there, actually in '75, and my dog wouldn't, I normally would walk the dog around the down by the Hudson River. I was literally in the southernmost house in Riverdale. I had ducks and all kinds of waterfowl and stuff. It was a wooded area, unlike most areas in the Bronx, which are just concrete, cement. And the dog wouldn't go down there, and I saw a guy, and he seemed to be asleep in his car. And oftentimes people would sleep to wait for the next train, so I didn't think anything of it. But when I came back up the other way, his brains had been blown all throughout the back seat. It was quite grisly. Of course, I immediately called it in, and I was, I was pretty fascinated at watching the homicide investigation. And of course, the cops had used our house as kind of their command post, and we were making them coffee and stuff. And I was listening to them talk about it, and I followed up on the case. Actually, I kept tabs on it over the next year or two. But the one thing that really brought home what it must be like to be a homicide detective in New York City was the guy had his plastic gloves on, and he was examining the two wounds in the neck before the one that was under the chin, and he was eating a sandwich at the same time. He was working through his lunch hour and was having lunch as he's doing a forensic exam of a dead human. And to me, it was a real wake-up call that I guess you go into a certain place of disconnect at some point when you're exposed to horrific things like that. I'm sure active military personnel in the front lines of wars become numb and just there's some part of the human emotional body and the human brain that just clicks off, and it's, I think, a protection mechanism. But to see the guy sitting there eating a sandwich doing that, it just blew me away. And after a few dozen cattle mutilation investigations, I remembered back to that particular instance and realized that I was in the same place. That once you get really, well, you never get used to it, but once you get used to the actual scene, it becomes less and less grotesque up to a certain point, especially if you have your Vicks under your nose, so you really can't smell the cadaver. And that's the least my least favorite part of it. But after I had not investigated a case in 7 years, from about 99 to 2005, so about 6 years. That next case that I investigated, it just was so gross to me, and I had such a difficult time dealing with it. That switch, I guess, had been flicked back on, and all this stuff had a real impact on me in terms of just the graphic nature of it and how gross it is. There was a 7 year time period prior to that after dozens and dozens of these things, you just get numb to it.
In my old days as a mainstream journalist, I ran into a couple of death scenes, once on Country Road in Vermont, another time in South Carolina, where I was at somebody's home. The victim had been stabbed in the back and was head first on a sofa. And what I saw, of course, was the police officers cracking sardonic jokes, I guess, to relieve the tension. It's what they had to do.
Imagine being a medical examiner or a coroner in a big city. It boggles my mind that people can actually have that as a life work. I don't know. It's a tough job and somebody has to do it. But man, it must take a real steely constitution to be able to deal with that, and just the ultimate in professionalism.
Can I just pick up on that a little bit? Because I also have a lot of respect for that frontline worker. I work a lot with police and paramedics inside my classroom doing different educational components. And some of the stories they tell are absolutely just jaw-dropping. And as you say, it's an incredible constitution to do this work. And I have a lot of respect for those who are very professional in that areas. But when you think about the regular person who sees something that they're not supposed to see, and say, for example, the trauma that's associated with that. I don't know if any of you have ever had, a very traumatic experience. I had a very traumatic experience when my father died. He drowned in front of us up in northern Ontario in a lake. The undertow took him out into a very large lake area, and he disappeared in front of us. And I'll tell you, that trauma lasted for years for me. And just to connect it to the paranormal piece, like when you think of the frontline police officers, and I'm thinking specifically of Dale Spar and the Portage, Ohio piece, and then Shermer, how both of them, really completely destabilized because the thing that they had seen was literally too much for them. And it had a real rattling effect. And then you combine that with the social isolation, and you take a look at how witnesses are treated and how witnesses who have seen something that is just absolutely impossible and the impact that has on an individual. I think we see that throughout the literature, and I really feel that's something that needs a better kind of address. And they need to be treated differently instead of being mocked all the time, because these are pioneering individuals who are having very radical experiences that I feel that we're dismissing, as opposed to perhaps learning from them, and maybe in the ways that we used to learn from them. And I do think that's something that repeats quite a bit, and I wish it wasn't that way, really.
I totally agree, and I've been saying for years that I feel that the experience is important, of course, but I think the impact on the experiencer is where a majority of the work really should be done. Instead of, getting duration, azimuth, luminance, all these wonderful scientific data points, I think the follow-up work on a person that has had a paradigm shifting or life-changing experience, to find out how that has impacted their emotional life, their relationships, how they view their reality, how open they are about these subjects, how closed down they become. These are the areas I think that there's a tremendous amount of potential information and insight that we can gain from properly following up with these cases and looking at the experiencer and the impact of the experience on that person. Of course, this would fall into the whole idea of the valet control mechanism.
Absolutely.
How small little incremental events within the collective may have tremendous impact in toto when you start adding them all up. And it's those individual little points within the collective that may be at linchpin places in their culture or in the time frame. And not enough work is being done studying this particular aspect. And you point that out in many of your posts, that it's this kind of forest for the trees attitude, I think, that the investigation and research community has, that they have these kind of blind spots and blinders on to what could be very fertile ground for just opening up a whole new level of awareness and understanding about these things.
Well, you take a look at the nature of the society we live in. We're very consumed by our consumerism, our mundanity, our metal, our concrete, that world of the irrational creative impulse. That we've really done a lot to kick that into the ground and stomp all over it. And when you think of days gone by, that irrational individual, be they schizophrenic, delusional, or whatever labels that we give them now, they were once upon a time the shamans, the seers, the leaders, the people who introduced new ideas to the tribe, to the group, that shifted things. They were that anti-structure catalyst of change, who saw something incredible, perhaps experienced something incredible, brought that back to the group, and it was used as a pivot point, as a piece of learning and a way to go perhaps in a new direction. And you take a look at where we are now with the irrational, and I'm thinking of, the ship of fools mentality that we used to have back in the day, where we would gather all the infirm and insane, as we labeled them, and throw them on an old boat and send them down the coastline, and they would land somewhere, and somebody would gather up the group from their village, add them to the boat, and keep on shipping it.
So at my age, if my ship comes in, I better watch out for it. We have Brandstetter joining Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast. Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on our distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
You pick up the receiver with your heart racing and sweat dripping from your forehead. You finally muster the courage to dial the number to call into your favorite talk radio show. It rings once, twice, and then...
Hello, it's GCN. What's your name and the state you're calling from?
Surprised you got through, you squeak out.
Jason from Minnesota.
Please hold.
As you patiently wait for your turn, you begin to daydream about being a famous talk radio host and what it would be like to have your own show.
Jason from Minnesota, you're up.
Millions of loyal listeners worldwide waiting to call and talk to you.
Caller, are you there?
Cheering crowds surround you, calling out your name.
Jason! Jason! Going once, twice. Okay, we gotta move on to the next caller.
You blew it.
Huh? Wait, no!
Interact with the host you're listening to right now, online at GCNlive.com. Click on the community link. Engage with other listeners. Ask questions. Start debates. Don't agree with the host? Let them know. Be a part of the community at GCNlive.com.
Hi, I'm George Norrie from Coast to Coast AM. I recently learned about a very unusual pharmacist who does not advocate use of prescription drugs, except in rare circumstances, say when powerful antibiotics are needed to kill a potentially lethal infection, such as pneumonia or staph. Instead, pharmacist Ben Fuchs from Boulder, Colorado, suggests always giving the body all the nutrients it needs to survive, thrive, escape illness, and live younger and longer. I don't think you will find anyone who knows more about how the body works and can explain it in such a delightful and entertaining way. Ben has recorded some very useful health nugget minutes that are available 24/7 online at criticalhealthnews.com. I invite you to log on to criticalhealthnews.com, listen to these pharmacist Ben health nuggets, and maybe even interact with Ben via chat or email. You're going to love Pharmacist Ben online at criticalhealthnews.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
With Gene and Chris, we have Robert, known to our forum members as Brandstetter. Robert, how does your family identify you?
I'm dad. I'm father. The dog licks my face. That's his call to me, or sniffs my crotch. That's probably his happiest thing to do. And my wife just calls me Rob.
So the presence on the forums does not impact her in any negative way.
No. She's very happy with the wage earning that I'm doing right now, and appreciates that I've taken on all of the kitchen duties.
Whoa.
I love cooking. Cooking is one of my biggest relaxation pieces going.
Yeah, me too.
Surrounded by cookbooks. I love trying new foods. I love trying to cook new foods for the family. My daughter has gone on and off vegetarianism at various points in her life, and I've had to adapt and learn new things that way as well, which has been it's all been a very interesting, fun part of my life, really.
Is your cooking drawn to any particular cuisine?
I'm pretty all over the map, and I'm very interested in trying other cultures. My partner is Chinese, so I've learned a lot of different Asian cooking styles from her.
Sushi.
Adopted that. We used to make sushi all the time. We would go find ourselves a nice hunk of tuna from the market and bring that home and carve it up. But I'm willing to try anything. I'll try anything from any culture. I've really been interested in kind of Middle Eastern food and other spices, and trying to come up with new things. I get, as a regular piece, I teach a group of kids called the IB program, the International Baccalaureate program, and these kids, like my school, actually come from all over the world. So I always ask them at the end of every semester, I don't want your mom's recipe in a cookbook. I want your mom's recipe. Give me the best ones, your favorites. Let's put them together. And I use that as my next round of cooking for the next year.
Wow, what a great idea.
So is there perhaps a burnt state restaurant in your future?
Oh, I would love that as a retirement piece, right? More like a B&B thing where I just get to cook whatever I want. I'm not interested in taking orders from people, but I'd be happy to say, here, eat this. It's good for you.
It's a moose steak.
Well, I just had some moose, actually. A friend of mine just sent some moose up. My brother brought it here. He killed one up in the north of Sault Ste. Marie, where I originally come from. And I have to tell you, that moose steak was delicious. The best meat I've had in a long time.
If it's done right.
Absolutely. It was wonderful.
It's like the ultimate pot roast.
No insult intended, but to my wife, mousse is something she puts in her hair.
You can't eat a hair product?
So I take it then that you do not encourage your family to partake in any paranormal studies.
No, I'll be honest. I don't encourage it at all, and as I say, I come across as being pretty critical and skeptical on most pieces. And so, the few things that they do hear me speak about these is actually is critical pieces, and not those ones where I am like totally jaw dropped and going, "What? Just how is that possible?" You know. And I kind of save that. I'll be honest for the Paracast, and I found a collection of peers on the forum where I can engage in that dialogue, and I think that's a better and healthier place. I can, pick and choose who you want to engage in the dialogue with and follow a really interesting, creative set of ideas, because there's always so many amazing characters that are there that really drive the forum environments. I've really enjoyed it there, and that's where really I spend my time in terms of discussing paranormal pieces.
And I suppose you've seen some of the characters who come on in there and post messages, not to convey information, but maybe to cause a bit of trouble?
Yeah, I've seen the troll event happen on a number of occasions.
It's a curious phenomenon. I've met a few of the people who are some of the nastier posters online, and they come across as real pussycats in person. But as soon as they get this cloak of anonymity, they become other people. They become Mr. Hyde or Miss Hyde.
Yeah, they certainly can be. And I know from working with youth around issues of bullying online and why do kids bully and why do they feel more empowered when they're behind a screen and not face-to-face, you can imagine a lot of the stuff that gets spoken to each other, or at least the nasty stuff that you see on forums sometimes, would never happen in a bar with two people up against each other unless they were prepared to really slug it out. And is it even worth it when you take a look at what the discussion piece is? And I chalk it up to this, I'll be honest. Not everybody lives a very happy life or feels content or has discovered, a Zen way of being. And I think a lot of people have a lot of anger issues and difficulty and complexity to their life. And it's really easy to scapegoat that other individual that you don't know and use that perhaps as an avenue or a funnel to air your griefs or your anger or whatever it is. And I think it's also very easy to explode, and pick on really little things and think that somebody else is picking on you. And really, what we do know from that kind of behavior and that discussion is that that's really about how people feel about themselves. And it's about how people have their own personal difficulties. And so I try not to engage in those discussions or encourage that discussion at all, and try to move on to other topics, really.
Yeah, it's quite sad that some of these people really get so bent out of shape over the most inconsequential issues.
Well, I don't think there's, anything worth that you need to get that excited and emotional about. I mean, it's a forum, people. And I think I'm sure many of us have real lives that have more important people that are right in front of us, real life, living flesh and blood people that we should be really investing our time and emotion into. So why add extra, emotion and negativity to your life? Work stress is enough already. Being alive in the 21st century is pretty difficult. It's something that's supposed to be fun and entertaining and relaxing. Why should you bring so much emotion to that? I question that sometimes, and I wish people would just relax a little bit more.
Let's get back to the forums, of course. Obviously, those who get bent out of shape, what we do is we urge them or force them to take a brief vacation or a permanent vacation. So let's look at some of the more interesting forum posts that you've handled on the forums, Robert.
I saw a post there from Stagger Lee asking about, the burnt shingles, and was that not in fact evidence of a physical craft there? And when you look at Vallet's, breakdown of it, I think he identifies three specific components. There's the idea of a physical craft, something that maybe pings off radar, that maybe leaves impressions on grounds or burns shingles. There's the phenomenon itself that is witnessed, that the witness goes through it, whatever it is that they see or feel and experience. And then the third component is the sociological aftermath of it all. And I really like the idea of breaking it down into those three pieces. And I know there's a pretty famous interview between him and Jerry Clark, characters who've been diametrically opposed at various points in their discussions around ufology. And Clark is trying to get him to say, is it not a physical object? It's a real object that's out there. And Vallet is trying to say, well, we see these physical effects, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is purely physical. It's both, he says, right? That it can be both. And he cites some pretty classic examples of objects dissolving that appear to be solid and then seem to disappear into the ether. And whether or not that those craft that I saw that burned those shingles and burned that tree, did they create the impression of that? Do they have, I imagine they've got the energy, the technology, the ability to do whatever they want. Did they leave a mark for me to look at? Is it bait of some kind, or are we being lured into this area for other purposes? And so I question the concept of the physical nature of it. I know that there's a lot of examples of that. And what I would say, whatever it is, I think the UFO conundrum is a highly complex conundrum, especially as it connects to abductions. It's a very complex piece. And I don't think we can say simple things like it's the ETH or it's the ID8. I think that it's something we really don't have a handle on as of yet. All we can do is describe it and describe its components.
We have a lot more to come. We're talking to Burnt State with Gene and with Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Not just an alternative to the mainstream media. We're the premier independent talk radio network. We are GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
The human body is extraordinary. Despite all the stresses we inflict upon it, it still works hard to stay in balance. Thousands upon thousands of people rely upon Heart and Body Extract to help their body stay balanced. This excellent 100% natural herbal formula helps maintain healthy blood pressure levels, cleans arteries, promotes good circulation, balances cholesterol, and more. HB Extract, paired with healthy lifestyle choices like good nutrition and exercise, can give you a life free of pain, sickness, and fear. Recapture your youthful vitality and experience your body healing itself with the aid of HB Extract. It's extremely effective and it starts working in just days. Visit hbextract.com to learn more and to read scores scores of testimonials from satisfied customers, and we've never increased our price in over 10 years. That makes Heart and Body Extract as great a value now as it was the first day we sold it. A healthy heart is a happy heart. Call 866-295-5305 or go to hbextract.com.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows. Pause and rewind live TV. Even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
Hey, guess what? They've got some great deals for Valentine's Day at Guns80.com. They're calling it the Sweetheart Special. Guns80.com has lowered the price way down to $400 up until Valentine's Day. Order your Ghost AR-15 now. Tell your sweetheart that this is the right gift at the right time. Buy one for yourself. Buy one for your sweetheart, too. Your sweetheart will thank you for being so tuned into his or her needs. Get a brand new Ghost AR-15 right now for $400. Heck, buy two. His and hers. Go to guns80.com or call and ask for the sweetheart deal. Love is in the air at guns80.com. Call now, 844-2GUNS80. That's 844-248-6780. It's a sweetheart of a deal. Actually, it's a steal at $400. So call guns80.com at 844-2GUNS80. But hurry, supplies are limited. Call 844-2GUNS80 or get your Ghost AR-15 today at guns80.com on the web.
Hey, this is Marie D. Jones, the author of This Book is from the Future, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
This week, we're presenting one of our most knowledgeable and prolific forum posters, Ben State. And one of the subjects that comes up in the UFO field very often is whether some or all of the recent sightings are the result of test equipment from the military or private industry.
That could be a possibility. I looked at one point into, are the ships that we're seeing perhaps just advanced human technology, experimental pieces? I think some people have posted about, Rendlesham as being perhaps some type of holographic experimental piece testing the security of the peoples there. And I kind of looked at, our hologram technology over the decades, and I don't really see a capacity there to do the things that we're seeing, that's being reported. I think there's something much more sophisticated taking place than any human technology that's at work. And I would imagine that whatever is behind the UFO experience has the ability, it seems, to not only manipulate our own perhaps experience and response to it, or maybe we are somehow hardwired in a way that does respond to whatever that external stimulus is to kind of produce the things that we do. And maybe, we go from culture to culture, we see different kinds of craft. We go from culture to culture, we see different kinds of aliens. Depending on what kind of, pharmacology you're putting into your mind, you also might see these different kinds of aliens as well. So I'm kind of leaning towards this notion that there's something about us and about our neurochemistry that is responding to an external stimulus that makes us see what we see. The idea of it being solid and physical, that's a conundrum, and I leave it to Jerry Clark's kind of final statement about the liminal experience. There's those hardcore cases that we have trace evidence of, but most of the stuff that we've got really is alive only in the minds of the witness and the experiencer, and there is no proof for it anywhere else, and even that real physical proof is pretty hard to come by.
But what about the trace evidence factor? Isn't that an indication of something that is solid, that can be identified? I mean, with the radar tracking, we realize any kind of signal might trigger the radar. But what about trace evidence?
Yeah, well, when you listen to Valet's explanation of it, as he's trying to explain to Jerry, look, this is how I'm thinking about it, he says, well, it's very easy for this phenomenon, perhaps, to create that trace evidence, to leave that there behind, right? To leave the impression of here we are perhaps craft from another, galaxy, or even in some of the abduction lore, we hear the tales of, we're from the third galaxy over here, we're Tetonians or whatever, you hear all these different kind of tales that I don't know if we can actually say it's a real physical piece. Even with the radar pieces, what we can say, and this is Valet's position, is there's enough energy behind whatever it is that gives that ability or that capacity to create that. And it seems like there's almost a heightened awareness on whatever it is that's behind the UFO experience, that we have very minimal, examples of something that's really graspable, that we can say, oh, here we go, here's the trace evidence. We've got these few radar pieces, we've got these few examples of landings here and there. We have very few kind of sightings. And what we most often have is an individual sighting, as opposed to a kind of collective or a group sighting. And those group sightings do seem to be about something very physical manifesting in our environment. But whether it has that ability to move in and out of three-dimensional solid matter and perhaps can participate in other types of reality that humans themselves are just completely oblivious to. Let's face it, we're a species living on planet Earth that has a certain set of sensory capacities that allow us to do the things we do and participate in the reality the way we do it. And we don't even have a handle fully on that. I think most people don't even know that 90% of what you see when you're looking is a pre-recorded event happening inside of your brain. That's your brain that's already captured these visual images, and your fovea centralis, the focus of your eye, you're getting that 10% that's coming off of that. But everything else is playback. And if everything else is playback, and we're suddenly confronted with things that we don't understand, that we've never seen before, and we're trying to focus in on that, well, maybe our brain just searches through the files like it does in dreams and says, well, here, I think what you're looking at right now is this. And it conjures up a spaceman, or conjures up a UFO, or could be a cigar-shaped one or a saucer, depends on whatever might be in your memory space.
Still, I wonder about the stories that appear in the press and how suddenly we get these waves of UFO and paranormal events.
When we talk about those wave sightings, right, and something gets reported in the news, and then suddenly there's a whole collection of those similar reports that unfold, a lot of these things are planted. We're definitely in this information age, and Valet again kind of talks about that idea of the role, the control system is about the impact of the mythology, that it's participating somehow in our active mythology, and it is constructing itself along the lines of these very familiar narratives that we pass on to each other. And now we're busy passing those narratives on in the digital environment. So to me, it's not a wonder that a lot of people see a lot of similar stuff. And I think we should actually be investigating those pieces a little bit more clearly. And I know when you had Greg Bishop on, you were talking a bit about the DMT piece and some of the commonalities that are there that link up with abduction experiences. I think we should be spending a lot more time understanding our neurochemistry, how it is that our brains actually work, and how it's responding perhaps to these anomalous stimuli.
So maybe it is, as has been speculated, that UFOs and other phenomenon, it's a case of misdirection. Like the magician says, look over here, but while you're looking over here, the real thing is happening over there instead, but you're not seeing it.
There's a line that my wife uses all the time whenever she says that, people are being distracted too much by something that's superficial. It's called dancing on the stage of God. That really we're missing what's actually really going on. That discussion, that debate about getting the signatures, that thing where we believe that, a ship crashed and the government knows all about it and they're hiding this technology from us, all of that to me is all red herring material. I think perhaps there's something much more complex, sophisticated, that very well could be very happy, perhaps on one hand, that we're caught up in this endless loop of trying to get the government to disclose information that they probably don't know anything about at all. So I think on one hand, maybe we're being distracted in some way. And I think out of that line of thinking, you do get, maybe, the cryptoterrestrial hypothesis or that thought experiment from Mac Tonnies that says, well, maybe we need to start thinking along different lines. Or I think, as Chris described with Greg Bishop again, where he says, when you're told to look in one direction, you'll see great things. He turns around and looks in the other. And I think we need to make those anti-structure pieces part of understanding the UFO experience as well, too, that it's not a simplistic piece about ships coming from another galaxy crashing there. There's something else going on that's much stranger than that. There's just too much of it, too much variation. It just doesn't make sense. And I think that the universe is probably a lot stranger than the simple narratives we've used to explain ufology.
So tell me, Bernstein, what did, if anything, crash at Roswell?
I don't think anybody quite really knows about that. I think what's interesting about what crashed at Roswell is the endless amount of different stories, whether it's Redfern's maybe 3 or 4 different versions of it that he's constructed, or Mosley's comment on the flower tape that's there. I don't think we can know. I think when we talk about something like Roswell, we've moved past the discussion of evidence and understanding what took place. Now we're dealing with Roswell, sociological Roswell, and we're dealing with the aftermath of things like big conventions and people wearing alien costumes and tinfoil hats and people perhaps using it as a different kind of a mechanism. And I think it's the wrong mechanism, to be honest. I understand people need to have a good laugh and entertain themselves with it. But I think what we're looking at with Roswell now is more the effects of the idea of Roswell, and I don't think we'll ever understand anything about it at all.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I think it's fair to say in this day and age that we'll never, ever discover the secret about Roswell. We'll just get tantalizing stories. And by the way, there's supposed to be this coming week a press conference where they're going to reveal these slides from 1947, allegedly, that show an alien. Well, we'll have to see how that works out. A reminder, we have a free book for you, a free ebook, Secrets of the Mysterious Valley from Chris O'Brien. To get a copy, go to theparacast.com. That's theparacast.com. Sign up for our free weekly newsletter, and we'll email you a copy of the ebook version of Chris's book, Secrets of the Mysterious Valley, in a few days. We have Bernstein here with Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
UnseenNow.com, proud sponsor of GCN. Unseen Now's unparalleled encryption tools keep your communications secure. GCN.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Talk to a sales rep at iWeb.com. Use the promo code TechNightOwl for a special discount.
Did you know by age 50, half of all men have an enlarged prostate? This means more urges to urinate, longer bathroom trips, waking at night to urinate, or issues with sex. If this sounds familiar, call us now, because we're shipping free bottles of Super Beta Prostate to listeners of this station. Super Beta Prostate is a non-prescription formula guaranteed to reduce the symptoms of your enlarged prostate. It's yours free. Pay only shipping and handling. Just call 1-800-205-8110. In clinical trials, the ingredient in Super Beta Prostate was shown to reduce urges to urinate, improve bladder emptying, reduce waking at night to urinate, and improve quality of life. This Super Beta Prostate free offer is for listeners of this station, but it won't last. Don't wait. Just call 1-800-205-8110. That's 1-800-205-8110. Call 1-800-205-8110.
Yeah?
Do you want to see me, sir? Well, I did, but now that I do, I'm not so sure. Sir? Johnson, I got a mission for you that could change your life. Oh, good, sir. It involves traveling halfway around the world without so much as half a clue of where you're going or what you're going to do when you get there.
Situation normal, sir?
Uh-huh. Right, I'll be leading this mission, Johnson, so I'll be telling you what to do.
You, sir?
That's right, Johnson, and I say first things first.
Oh, good plan, sir.
And what I say is first is food. Always remember that, Johnson. Food is a big deal.
Sir, my brother-in-law can give us a really good deal on some surplus MREs.
Johnson, if you've got half a brain and that empty head of yours, you'll call the freeze-dry guy like I did. That food is better for you, it rehydrates faster, and it's good, Johnson. And it keeps for up to 30 years.
Will we be gone that long, sir?
I hope not. Now get your supplies organized and meet me down to the pier at dawn on Sunday. We sail at sunrise.
Yes, sir.
This adventure is brought to you by the Freeze Dry Guy. Call 866-404-3663 or visit freezedryguy.com.
For over 5 years, you've been hearing about the Berkey Guy, so you may know a few things about him. For example, you are well aware of the superior quality and effectiveness of Berkey water filters and accessories. But did you know the Berkeys have had independent lab tests done to prove just how effective they are? It's true, and he can email you the test results. Just visit goberkey.com. You may also know that the Berkey Guy has helped tens of thousands of people get better prepared. Now here's something you may not know. GoBerkey.com has amazing specials and deals all the time on a wide variety of survival and preparedness products, most ready to ship same day. Visit the Berkey Guy at GoBerkey.com and be sure to click the red Products on Sale Now button. You can always call toll-free 877-886-3653. Again, that's 877-886-3653. GoBerkey.com, home of the Berkey Guy.
Hi, this is James Fox from Chasing UFOs. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Now, maybe you've noticed that Chris's voice sounds a wee bit different. Maybe not quite as raspy. That's because, around 10 days ago, he gave up smoking.
Congratulations, brother. Big accomplishment.
Yeah, 40 years and my lungs decided that it was time.
Wow. Good for you. That's a hard one. I know I didn't give up. It took a long time for me to give up. I needed to have a really good reason. And remember when my dad died, he hated the fact that I smoked. He had given it up years before, and that wasn't a reason for me to give up. But as soon as I found out we were pregnant with our daughter, I quit smoking that day, and I haven't looked back since.
Yep, I'm doing really good. I'm not off nicotine. I'm still chewing some gum occasionally, and I've got my e-cigarette if I really need to suck on something. But in terms of actually lighting up and smoking carbon monoxide and tar, I've cut that out. There was some humps there, but I'm over the hump and feeling good. I wanted to bring up a point that we were starting to kind of veer towards, and that was, trace evidence and hard data science. And one case that you don't hear about very much that has always really fascinated me, and if you talk to, Ted Phillips is widely considered to have the largest database of trace evidence cases, which I think is up 7,000-8,000 at this point, probably more. But the 1971 Delphos, Kansas case has always intrigued me as being an incredibly important case that is largely overlooked by the mainstream in ufology. We're talking about fluorescing material that fluoresced for many hours. Mm-hmm. Soil effects that were demonstrated for years afterward. Just an amazing case. And I urge any of our listeners who really would like to dive into one of the best trace evidence cases that is, to my knowledge, has yet to be even close to being debunked, is the 1971 Delphos case from Kansas, Delphos. Kansas. It's an amazing case, and if we had, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they land very often now. We just don't have the quality of landing cases that we had back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It seems that the more popular the subject gets, the more at arm's length these crafts seem to be. So anyway, that's a good little research project for anybody out there.
But we're so very stuck in the old theories about UFOs that have persisted for so many years, that they're really spaceships from some planetary system, maybe orbiting another star. So is there a way to ever work around that prevailing view?
I think that it is a conundrum that we're in, and I remember reading about the Delphos case and the luminance that was there. I'm not too sure about where we go from here, to be honest. I think we're kind of caught in a real rut around how we think about it, because we're living with that old paradigm of it's a craft from outer space. I think Chris brings up a very interesting point, that we don't seem to have those juicy, chunky cases around that we could really sink, I guess, maybe a kind of a contemporary science in on it. The case for me that really boggles my brain, that I go back to, that we discussed a bit on the forums, is the Pierre Fortunato Zanfretta abduction series. That one really trips me out entirely, and it also has some very good physical evidence pieces there, and it would be just so wonderful to be able to turn maybe contemporary science onto that and see if we can change the way that we think about it. But I think first, to do that, we really need to honor the witness in society and be able to have a different approach to them, so that the information that we're taking in from them is treated with a little bit more care and compassion and assistance, really, because you take a look at how their lives descend after they report such incredible things. And in Fortunato's case, right, in the Zanfretta case, we even have a suicide that shows up in the middle of that, because somebody was so affected by what they saw. They're not even the main participant in it. There's somebody that's driving during the fourth abduction and seeing lights in the sky, and it drove them to a pretty dark space.
Why don't you give some of our new listeners a thumbnail sketch of that particular series of events, because it isn't as well known here in this country as it is in the country of origin.
It's a mind-blowing case from 1978. He's a 26-year-old night watchman who one night goes out to investigate a house, and as he's there patrolling the grounds with his flashlight, he feels a tap on his shoulder, and standing behind him is, I think he describes, it's at least a 10-foot creature, kind of lizard-like, undulating green flesh with a box on its mouth that it's supposedly breathing with, pointy things coming out the side of his face, and blasts him with a huge chunk of heat. And he is found following that by other night watchmen come out, and they find him lying on the ground. He bolts up with his gun and flashlight ready to attack them. They tackle him and grab him. His body is still warm, even though it's freezing cold out. It's 1 o'clock at night. His body is still super warm, and this begins a series of abductions that include these kind of same pieces with the heat and intensity. In one case, he is found where he claims that the car was driving itself and he's crashed. And again, people show up on the scene there, and the car is cooking. It's like it'd been out in the blazing sun, and again, it's like a rainy night. Himself is very, very hot and dry despite the rain, and the inside of the car is like an oven. These incidents seem to continue until there was one incident where 4 people were also chasing, the lights that they had seen, and he's transported on a motorcycle to the top of a mountain that nobody saw him, get to. And following that incident, the one person does kill themselves. He goes under sodium pentothal and recounts all of these pieces. People are completely, cannot understand how these things could be real. And most people who investigate him and interrogate him arrive at the notion that these things must really be happening. And he's telling people that they want him, they want to take him. They want to take him away, and that he's not going to come back. And he tells the officers, I don't want to go. I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to leave everybody behind. In one incident, he is beamed up onto their ship. He sees the checkered man, right, the man in the checkered shirt at one incident, and then he's transported up onto a cloud, beamed into a ship. In the ship, the same characters are there. They are showing him different things. There's like a frogman, the frogman story. There's a frogman in a tube that they say is one of their enemies. They've got a bird-like alien there, a caveman, and they tell him that he's very special, that they need to use him, and they give him I think a transparent sphere, and inside of it is a electric glowing pyramid. And they tell him that with this object, you will be able to explain to humans, how they live and what's really going on in their lives. And they said they're from the planet Teutonia. Now, outside some of the actual cases where they find his body and near his car, there are actual physical footprints that were, I think, 20 inches long by 10 inches. They're enormous. You can see pictures of them online. It's absolutely outstanding as far as a case goes. It's very disturbing and debilitating. And I think for him as an individual, over the course of about 2.5 years, he had no less than, I think, at least 6 or 7 incidents with these same aliens who told him at one point were coming back in greater numbers. Which never really seemed to happen, but he did have that series of incidents across 2 years, and it seems to take us away from the idea of just something that's delusional or a schizophrenic episode. It seems to be something much more concrete and specific, doesn't it?
Of course, you can never trust E.T. They promise they'll come back, and they never do. They talk about possible future events, and they never occur. They're inconsistent from one to the other. But the problem here is the naive nature of the acceptance of what these higher beings allegedly tell you.
Well, and one begins to wonder, are all these the stories that seem to be in conflict with each other? Nothing really does seem to sync up. I think what syncs up is it syncs up in the mind of maybe the paranormal investigator who's decided this is the theory I'm going to work with, and I'm going to force all the evidence into this slot, and I'm going to shave off the parts that don't seem to make sense. But when you talk to perhaps more rigorous investigators, like somebody like Chris Rakowski, I'm reading his book Abductions and Aliens, what's really going on right now. And in there he identifies, there's no common theme. There's no common thread. It's a bunch of lies, paradoxes, weird statements, and you really can't make much sense out of any of it at all.
And that takes us to the worst part of the problem with regard to the UFO enigma. Can we ever, at any time, make any sense of this phenomenon? I mean, there are so many permutations. Some of the excuses used by investigators is that, sure, you'll have different types of craft because maybe they come from different places, different planets. We'd like you to visit plus.theparacast.com. That's plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com, and check it out. Subscribe to our new Paracast Plus service. What's this about? Well, if you sign up, and we have monthly subscriptions, annual subscriptions, 5-year subscriptions, you get an ad-free version of this show in a higher resolution copy, so everything is crisper and cleaner, even those bad cell phone connections. And you get the exclusive After the Paracast podcast, plus.theparacast.com. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
GCN, proudly sponsored by UnseenNow.com. Find out how to stop Big Brother in his tracks at UnseenNow.com. This is GCN.
This is Dan Pilla. Do you owe the IRS money you can't pay? Are tax debts crippling you? I've defended people from the IRS for over 30 years. I've helped thousands, and I can help you too. I wrote the book on IRS settlement, and I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a hopeless case. Call 800-34-NO-TAX to finally get free of IRS debt. With the IRS's new programs, there's never been a better time to solve your problem. Call 800-34-NO-TAX. That's 800-34-NO-TAX, or my website, danpilla.com.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
This alert just came in. This special announcement is for business owners and leaders of organizations who've been waiting for the right time to build. General Steel has made it impossible to wait any longer with rock-bottom prices that could save you thousands. That's right, General Steel, America's leader in pre-engineered structures, is offering buildings at prices you will never see again. Don't miss these prices. A 50 by 100 for $35,000. You heard right. That's 5,000 square feet for $35,000. Manufacturers, if you need a larger building, try a 100 by 100 commercial building for $129,000. You can't afford to rent with these prices. Imagine a 70 by 100-foot church building for under $69,000. With the economy improving and interest rates still at historic lows, you can't afford to wait. So call 866-91-STEEL. Lock in your price now. Call 866-91-STEEL. That's 866-917-8335.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We are in the final 4 segments of our visit with Burnt State. Robert, one of our most prolific forum posters at forum.theparacast.com. And if you want to participate, by the way, you go to our forum, forum.theparacast.com. You sign up. You could use your Twitter or Facebook name to make the process easier. Here's Chris with some questions from listeners.
Well, Dissection Stalker has some very elaborate posts that I'm trying to make heads or tails of them in terms of trying to come up with a punchy question. But one of the things that he's really interested in is this whole idea of a space-time continuum knowledge base, like some sort of other is out there that's required to complete some sort of like educational process, let's say, or you've read through his questions. I'm not sure exactly how to sum all this up into a question. Basically, he points out when Greg Bishop was on recently that perhaps these phenomena, he says phenomena in singular, but I think phenomena is something common to the planet, like wind, or it's some sort of has an elemental presence, and that it may have some sort of internal component. Now we've touched on this now already in the show, but he wants you to elaborate, pontificate, and give us your best understandings that you can muster at this space-time continuum element on this. He calls those other things like the keys to these kingdoms.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure what he's getting at, but why don't you try to address this particular Jungerian construct that we're somehow connected with it, and it seems symbiotic. It seems that it needs us as much as we need it, and for what purpose? Possibly is it for growth? Is it for deeper understanding? Is it for some sort of educational thing? What's your thoughts?
Well, we've heard that phrase repeatedly on the Paracast. UFOs are here to make us think, and I do think that really is perhaps the best that we can take out of the UFO experience. I really loved Greg's comment about the idea that whatever it is could be as common as the wind, and when you start to connect some of these other new strains and thoughts that are taking place in ufology, I think there's a lot more a deeper appreciation to what's the role of neurochemistry inside the UFO experience, specifically the abduction experience. There seems to be some very specific patterns that take place. It includes the idea of fear. Fear seems to induce maybe a spontaneous bursts from the pineal gland. All sorts of chemistry starts flooding through our body. And the idea of a spontaneous DMT burst, I think there's something we should be investigating that, because we know that when we look at those people who have taken Strassman's experiments on DMT, and I think the one character that's doing some very interesting writing about this, his name is, I think it's David Luke. He's coming out of England, and he's really consolidating all this kind of work into some very interesting discussion around the connection between paranormal and pharmacology and the neurochemistry experience. We know from the DMT users that they see 4 types of characters. I think there's the machine elves, there's the gray aliens, there's the reptoids that are covered with jewels, and I think there's like some toasty brown characters or something like that. So you have to ask yourself, well, why is that happening? Is this something about our brain? Are we being turned towards and being able to see an experience that maybe is very common, that is part of our planetary experience, part of our planetary existence, and the drug is just unlocking that door and allows us now to be participants in this environment that normally is secluded from us because of the nature of our chemistry and how our perceptions work? That idea of the space-time continuum, when we think of the hallucinogenic experience, maybe the writings of Terence McKenna and others who follows the entheogen role in our lives, whether it's that shamanistic role or it's that idea of the transformative collective experience, the fact that people who share, for example, in certain drugs and do it together, do share the visions as well too at the same time. Certainly these all seem to be clues that are leading us towards some other kind of understanding of what might these, those elementals, that's what Hynek resided on at the end of the day, was that, I think they're elementals. I think they've always been with us. There's something that's just behind that cloak.
Valet finally got through to him. Well, here's one. Here's an idea. It just kind of came to me as you were talking. Perhaps there's some sort of trigger mechanism that something other has the ability to create some sort of trigger mechanism or utilize a trigger mechanism that inadvertently or by design allows our own bodies to dump naturally produce DMT into our systems, which then facilitate and appear to manifest some sort of hallucinatory or real effects that the brain is perceiving. Perhaps it's tearing away part of the veil, allowing us to see something, or perhaps it's exposing, a covered up ability that we have to of perception, or perhaps it's actually creating an effect within our mind and sort of creating this weird cause and effect loop.
I really do think that it is something along those lines, and that if we can perhaps maybe separate some of the really clinical experiences where perhaps people are in fact schizophrenic, are in fact delusional, and are claiming alien abduction, I think if we can separate those from these other very similar hallucinatory schizoid events, we do seem to see those pieces happen. First, there is the fear. Something has introduced fear inside of the environment. Fear seems to create a physiological response inside of us, and we enter into that panic attack, that hallucinogenic experience. If people have ever had either of those before, they know that reality shifts, reality breaks, and their entire experience of reality alters. And I think that perhaps something is being lifted at that moment that does allow us to participate in something else. And I do believe there is an external stimulus of some sort, whatever that is. But I do think it's inducing that kind of an experience for us.
Again, we have to be careful to lump the reaction of a particular witness into particular emotional categories, because I've had, let's say, a multiple witness case where most people actually are in a state of wonder and excitement. Mm-hmm. And maybe one or two are in a state of fear and panic and paranoia. So it seems to separate out into, you tend to revert to primal sort of emotional states, whether it's fear, whether it's elation, whether it's wonder, whether it's paranoia. But there doesn't really seem to be much middle ground. Occasionally you'll get somebody that looks at it and goes, yeah, so what? It's a big ship hanging there, big deal. Right. Those are the rare ones. But I have encountered people in groups where some people said, yeah, I saw it. It wasn't a big deal. Oh, yeah, the Space Brothers came down to say hello. Oh, yuck, yuck, yuck. And it was like nothing. It's like maybe a school bus just drove by or something. Sure. And while other people are having these life-altering experiences where they think they've been selected for some special message, or other people are so in fear that they go hide under a car in one case. So maybe it is the individual and the quality and the quality of the emotional response that again may be at play here that could be crucial for further understanding.
I agree completely with that. I mean, I know from even just in the Ouija experience, some people would get freaked out. Some would think it was very normal. The one person had a complete total breakdown in front of us and was in hysterical fits and screaming and felt like reality had broken for her in that moment. And it took us hours to calm that individual down. And so I do think that perhaps either biologically or neurochemically, we might all be wired differently. I would be concerned about that idea of feeling selected. I think that path perhaps is a dangerous route to go. I don't think people should be thinking like that. But perhaps just because of the way that we are biologically, and we're all biologically very, very different, that in fact the effects might range dramatically for each individual when confronted with these rare anomalous stimuli.
Yeah. Someone with worthiness issues that all of a sudden has been selected by the Space Brothers, that could that could actually be psychologically very healing for them, because then all of a sudden, instead of, having self-worthiness issues, all of a sudden they feel like they're worthy. Obviously that can go to a place that's unhealthy, and they start cults and do group suicides and that sort of thing. But there could be a positive upside.
Or maybe you shouldn't believe ET, as we say. We have Brandstetter with Gene and Chris. You're in the Paracast. Neighbors, are you tired of dealing with a slow web hosting provider? Well, check out A2 Hosting and their screaming fast Swift server platform. They even have SSDs that load pages 300% faster than the competition. Ready to give your site a speed boost? Well, tell you what, neighbors, head on over to a2hosting.com. That's A2, that's number 2, a2hosting.com. Check out their Prime hosting account. And get this, neighbors, they're even giving you an exclusive 25% off discount for all our listeners. 25%. And remember, their Guru Crew support team is standing by 24/7, 365 days a year to answer any of your questions. Now, to get the discount, use the coupon code GENE when you check out.
Have you ever felt like the United States government knows way too much about your financial affairs? I continue to hear stories about property seizures, frozen bank accounts, confiscation of stocks and bonds. It makes me wonder if the U.S. citizen will ever again have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unfortunately, with the Drug and Money Laundering Act, the IRS Revenue Ruling 6045 of 1984, and the Trading with the Enemy Act and Franklin D. Roosevelt's Executive Order of 1933, some precious metal holdings are subject to government intervention. For this reason, Midas Resources has prepared a report explaining the boundaries of trading precious metals privately. Whether if you have any intention of trading with Midas Resources or not, I have instructed my representatives to give this report out free. Call for your free copy at 1-800-686-2237. When investing, always proceed with caution. Again, call 1-800-686-2237. Exercise your legal right to trade metals privately. 1-800-686-2237.
Hi, this is Steve Sanchez, and based on a recent study, it was found that 57 million Americans had legal issues over the last 12 months, but only 60% of those studied sought out the services of a lawyer. Why? In a nutshell, affordability. Well, my friends at Legal Shield have created a solution that can help you not if, but when you need an attorney. For as little as $17 per month, Legal Shield will provide you unlimited access to qualified attorneys at an accomplished law firm for advice and counsel on legal issues, no matter how serious or trivial. For over 40 years and with 1.4 million families across North America, Legal Shield can help you, the loyal GCN listener. Representatives are standing by now to answer your questions, so call them now at 1-855-340-SAVE. That's 1-855-340-7283, or visit them at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com.
Results will vary from case to case.
On Facebook, on the news, and in conversations with friends, we're bombarded every day with advice on how to be healthier, from gluten-free and non-GMO diets to how much exercise and sleep the body needs. But how much have you heard about alkalizing the body? AlkaVision Plasma pH drops are a holistic and natural way to get your body's pH levels back in balance. Just a few drops in water will help your body rid itself of harmful waste. And even the healthiest of diets can be complemented with your daily use of AlkaVision Plasma pH drops. Who isn't looking for more vibrance, vigor, and energy? Now buy 2 bottles of AlkaVision Plasma pH drops and get $10 off your order. Visit alkavision.com or call 800-518-7615. AlkaVision Plasma pH drops are packed with a powerful combination of the most alkaline minerals and compounds. Open the door to greater health, vitality, and zest for life. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health. Call 800-518-7615 or head to alkavision.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
We have Bernd State joining us on the Paracast this week. A reminder to visit plus.theparacast.com. That's plus.theparacast.com to learn about the Paracast Plus, our new subscription service, where you can also get a copy of our other show after the Paracast at plus.theparacast.com. So let's look at ET or the higher beings or whoever or whatever it is. Do they care about us one way or the other, Bernd State?
I think I've sided with the notion that I think it's pretty indifferent and agnostic for the most part. It's our individual response that seems to build it into something else altogether. And just to pick up on the point Chris had in that last segment about the idea of, our coping mechanisms, Rakowski in his Abductions and Aliens book talks about certain individuals who, in the middle of their schizophrenic breakdown, believe they're having complete communion with aliens. They're seeing them, they're walking with them, they're taking them to school, they're helping them study for tests, etc. And what you're seeing inside those moments from a clinical perspective is this person has created a coping mechanism inside their own mind in order to deal with the situation. And that's why I think it's really important that we treat witnesses very carefully, because in some cases, I think witnesses need specific types of medical attention. They don't need hypnotic regression. They need, a psychiatrist that they can perhaps talk to who is not going to judge their experience and perhaps be able to help them sort out the idea of what's happening in their minds versus what's happening in reality. Now, I still want to reserve, though, that opportunity that there are, in fact, real things that are happening, like the Zanfretta case, which I think is a very disturbing and complex case that seems to point towards, in fact, actual contact with another alien being of some sort. And I think in those cases, we also need to have that care and concern for that individual, because they're negotiating something that perhaps very few people on Earth have ever negotiated. And we need to perhaps get a better handle on what's actually happening. I think there's a lot of learning that we could be gaining that we're missing out on altogether with those events.
Yeah, I'd be very careful throwing psychiatry into this particular realm. I would suggest more of a counselor psychology approach as opposed to one that's reliant on drugs. Although, if someone obviously has a incredibly traumatic experience, then some sort of mood stabilizing could probably help. But I think for people to talk through these things is really important. And early on in my investigative process, 2 or 3 years in, where I was talking to just, at this point, probably several hundred people, I realized that what people were gaining from me was a sympathetic ear, someone that they could actually talk to about this stuff and get certain emotional issues dealt with in a safe environment, to someone that was not going to judge them and question their sanity, but someone that was there to listen and possibly give them some feedback. And the whole reason, for instance, that I was asked to come up to the Sherman Ranch was for that very purpose. For instance, for that infamous Skinwalker Ranch case. When you start dealing with paradigm-shifting events and the effect they have on people, they don't know where to turn, they don't know who to talk to, and they're very, all these social blockages are raised around them, and they have a real hard time coming up with some recourse, where they can turn, who they can turn to. And I think getting it off their chest, being able to talk about it, being able to be in a judgmental space with somebody who they trust is the most important thing. Then you can maybe talk about the psychiatrists and stabilizing their moods and putting them on Prozac, whatever it is that these people do.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that kind of pharmacology at all either, in terms of regulating people that way. But I can also recognize that some of these experiences can put people in such incredible states where they're just beside themselves. And I think we see this often in the literature, where an individual's had something very fantastic happen to them. And then it seems, as we look at them as they go on, they start to descend even further into perhaps other flights of fancy, and now they really are in trouble. I know from spending time with a friend of mine, 2 major schizophrenic breakdowns, and the second time it happened, he was with his friends and in a city of people that knew him, and we all agreed together we were not going to let him get drugged again and be put on these terrible, terrible things that just racked his body and destroyed him. And we decided we would engage in talk therapy, and we did 24-hour round-the-clock attention with him, and being with him for some people was very difficult. Their experience was very similar to as if they had seen the alien, because talking to someone in an altered state whose reality is very, very different is, I think, very shocking for people. And I can see how you can pull other people into your delusion. You can help break their reality down too. But I think if you're sane enough and have a handle on things, I found talking with him to be very exciting, actually, and very interesting and very sad. But I do know that it was through our constant conversations that he was able to find a way back to the world that we were all participating in and get over the thing that was troubling him. He was engaging in some pretty hectic stuff, man. He was showing me what was going on in the basement. He was building bombs out of cardboard boxes and different things. And then he took me to this one room. It was like an old apartment house downtown Toronto. And there was a series of different kind of strange wallpapers. And he had set up a chair in the center with a light shining on it. And he said, "This is the interrogation room." You had to know that he was interrogating himself. And I think that's part of the experience, these altered experiences, is our brain is allowed to split. We can't hear voices. We can't talk to ourselves. And sometimes that gets out of hand and creates whole new personalities. And I do believe the trauma of any kind of traumatic experience can produce such effects, whether it's the UFO experience or it's watching somebody die. I think that those traumas need that level of counseling that Chris is talking about, where we've got to give people real care.
And then you do have true chemical imbalances that need to be dealt with directly. And you know, pharmacology has come a long way in that regard, but we really have to be careful in the paranormal realm or the ufological realm. We really have to be extremely careful about maintaining a systematic approach of how to counsel people and how to refer them on to professionals that are going to deal with them in a non-judgmental fashion.
And those are few and far between. I think a lot of people who have abduction experiences have very great difficulty finding that person who is non-judgmental and will engage in that talk therapy with them.
Of course, the question of the ages here, Brandstetter, is, with abductions, what is really happening to these people?
That is a really, really tricky question, Gene, because I think that the abduction experience is a very vast, wide spectrum. And I like Rakowski's comment. He calls it alien abduction syndrome, that this is something that is in fact happening in the populace. It is something that's present, and we need to bring a very thoughtful perspective on how to treat it and not dismiss it at all in any way. But it is a wide spectrum.
Of course, there's still the question whether any of these cases could possibly have some sort of ET involvement or not.
Not that I would deny that that's possibly happening there, but I think the more that we do look at abductions, I think if we do approach it with care and concern, we can start to tease out that perhaps some of these experiences are very deeply internal experiences, what their connection is to other worlds, whether it's aliens or not. I think that's another question altogether, and I don't think we have any proof or evidence really of that, except in very, very few cases.
Well, it's certainly true on the Paracast that when we discuss so-called alien abductions, we don't take the prevailing viewpoint. And sometimes that gets us on the bad side of some people, but that's how it goes. That's what we think. There's a lot more to it than we expect. With Gene and with Chris and Brandstetter, you're in the Paracast.
Free from the shackles of corporate America, we're the place for independent thinkers. GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code NIGHTOWL. Use the coupon code NIGHTOWL to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
Did you know by age 50, half of all men have an enlarged prostate? This means more urges to urinate, longer bathroom trips, waking at night to urinate, or issues with sex. If this sounds familiar, call us now, because we're shipping free bottles of Super Beta Prostate to listeners of this station. Super Beta Prostate is a non-prescription formula guaranteed to reduce the symptoms of your enlarged prostate. It's yours free. Pay only shipping and handling. Just call 1-800-205-8110. In clinical trials, the ingredient in Super Beta Prostate was shown to reduce urges to urinate, improve bladder emptying, reduce waking at night to urinate, and improve quality of life. This Super Beta Prostate free offer is for listeners of this station, but it won't last. Don't wait. Just call 1-800-205-8110. That's 1-800-205-8110. Call 1-800-205-8110.
Yeah?
Did you want to see me, sir?
Well, I did, but now that I do, I'm not so sure.
Sir?
Johnson, I got a mission for you that could change your life.
Oh, good, sir.
It involves traveling halfway around the world without so much as half a clue of where you're going or what you're going to do when you get there.
Situation normal, sir?
Uh-huh. Well, I'll be leading this mission, Johnson, so I'll be telling you what to do.
You, sir?
That's right, Johnson, and I say first things first.
Oh, good plan, sir.
And what I say is first is food. Always remember that, Johnson. Food is a big deal.
Sir, my brother-in-law can get us a really good deal on some surplus MREs.
Johnson, if you've got half a brain and that empty head of yours, you'll call the freeze-dry guy like I did. That food is better for you, it rehydrates faster, and it's good, Johnson, and it keeps for up to 30 years.
Will we be gone that long, sir?
I hope not. Now get your supplies organized and meet me down to the pier at dawn on Sunday. We sail at sunrise.
Yes, sir.
This adventure is brought to you by the Freeze Dry Guy. Call 866-404-3663 or visit freezedryguy.com. Are you always 5 minutes late? Maybe you're only late when you don't want to be somewhere. Then you realize you're always 5 minutes late. For work, you set 3 alarms, drag your feet in the shower, drink your coffee slowly until you're rushing out the door. 5 minutes late. It's not that you hate your job. Hate is such a strong word. You're just not that excited about it. But most people don't love what they do, right? Listen, if you're local to the Twin Cities, are hardworking, self-driven, with experience in sales, marketing, or advertising, are personable, and a whiz on the phone, you might want to join one of the largest independent talk radio networks in the world, GCN. Because right now, we are hiring, and we offer benefits. Experience preferred, but we'll train the right person. Is that you? Submit your resume today to advertise@gcnlive.com. That's advertise@gcnlive.com. Come work with the Genesis Communications Network, where you'll want to be 5 minutes early every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Abel. I'm the producer of Dark Skies, the co-author of AD After Disclosure, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
We're sitting down and we're relaxing with Gene and Chris in Burnt State, and maybe Chris is having a few. You Burnt State?
Well, I don't know. It depends on what kind of scotch he's drinking there.
I'm not a scotch drinker.
Oh, you're missing out.
I know. I've got a $200 bottle of scotch in there that I just hate to crack.
Okay, save it for me.
Yeah. It's a special edition in a black lacquer box and the whole deal.
Lovely.
It's given to me as a gift from a big tour group I did in November. I just don't have the heart to open it. It's so beautiful.
Well, you must share it with people, and just be sure you don't waste it by mixing it with anything. The most things that you should ever put in it.
Nice.
Not even ice, just one drop of water totally changes the complexity of scotch, and watch it come alive in your mouth. That is something else.
Okay, it sounds like I'm talking to a true aficionado. Okay, let's get to another subject that I know that you, one of the things that attracted you to the Paracast, I think, is the whole concept of the trickster, or some sort of mechanism of absurdity that just permeates and is a thread. It's a superhighway that runs through all these phenomenal categories, phenomenal events, descriptions of interactions with otherworldly beings and otherworldly craft and spirits and ghosts and ancestor spirits. I mean, you go around the world, it runs the gamut. And that's this whole idea of the absurd, the liminal, anti-structural, trickster type energy. What role do you feel this kind of force or element or mechanism plays in this whole scenario?
Well, I think we touched on it a little bit briefly before, but I do think it's one of the oldest parts of who we are as a society and a culture, and it goes back to that idea of creation and destruction, that you can't have a homogenous society that continues to exist in one mode only. There must be the nightmare that comes in that disrupts that. Something has to come in and change it and cause them to reinvent themselves, because it's unhealthy to stay as a homogenous society. And I think we can see that perhaps maybe historically or archaeologically, when suddenly, civilizations just seem to disappear or poof or change gears altogether. I do think that what we're talking about now in terms of the phenomena, we're talking about maybe the tertiary part or the sociological aspects. of the phenomenon, where I wonder how much of this is about us and it's about our own narratives that we're passing down, and that perhaps because of those memory pieces, those images that are already in our minds that have been passed down as narratives, that is in fact going to be the shape that we see. Right, so the event conforms to our expectations, as you spoke about with Bishop previously, and I do feel that somehow maybe we're in on the joke and we don't even know it. There's some of those self-deprecating aspects to some of these experiences.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
And maybe we're missing that, and you see it in dreams all the time. When you take a look and spend time thinking about your dreams, you can see there's your brain playing stuff back to you. It's trying to help you out with something. And from my perspective, dreams are about learning. And that's what's taking place, is that the dream imagery is there trying to reflect on the things that happen during the dream and try to help us along with learning or solving a problem, because that's what we are. We're learning and growing creatures. And so I do see, some of the stuff that Hansen talks about, that you talk about, these really wild events that have, in some cases, a real element of Schadenfreude to them, where we're kind of laughing at our misery. Even the stimulus or whatever it is seems to be almost mocking us or taking us down or degrading us. But maybe it's about us shifting gears because we're stuck and we're in a very stale mode of operation. And so we need to have those. And when you look at the paths that go along with the trickster element, right, that quite often this is about that individual who's on the margins of society, experiencing something incredible in the middle of the night. It's dark, and they see their spirit guide, or they see an extremely tall, monstrous, undulating, green-skinned alien there, but it shakes them up and shifts them, and they come back now to the group to tell their story of what happened. And I do believe that is the role of the trickster, that those eternal images that are Jungian. When you read Jung's treatise on the trickster, you see just how old this experience is. It seems like these are patterns of our mind.
Yeah. Well, in another, of course, that brings up the whole issue.
Now, we talk about tricksters every so often on the show, about weird things happening to shows. And let me tell you right now that we're in the next to last segment of this episode of the Paracast, and something weird has happened that we just discovered. So for those entire portions of the show, it may sound normal to you, but at the time of the recording, all of my voice parts, except for the very beginning, upped and vanished. They weren't there because my audio did not get recorded on the first take of this show.
Oh, my God. Jeez. Oh, man, Gene, that's the first time in the history of the show that's ever happened.
Technology let you down.
Well, it's very interesting here. We had this happen one time before where we actually lost a whole segment. We had Jacques Vallée on the show in the days of our previous co-host. You never heard the show, because we lost the first half, and he never came back to do it again until several years later that he did 1 hour on the Paracast.
Wow.
I mean, I know what's wrong and I know why it happened, but I wish I noticed this when we were doing the recording.
Oh, that makes my arches tingle.
Okay, we have the case of the tingled arches. I'm going to be up all night, and we'll have to have things work out a little differently. But it's going to take me probably another hour or two to edit this show than normally. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering what we're talking about, I'd rather not get into it. Let's just continue our discussion about tricksters and everything. But don't you see, Burnt State, that in terms of UFOs and things like that, the presence of the trickster seems to be causing so much issues?
It really is, and it is a wicked creature in some ways. I don't think it is always just laughter. And when we think about these experiences that we've been talking about, I think often these experiences are fearful experiences. They're nightmarish experiences. They're experiences that take us to the boundaries of society and to the margins. And I do believe the things we're talking about exist in these borderline spaces, or I described it on the forum, I think, of things that are just around the corner from you. And sometimes what's just around the corner is not too friendly at all. Sometimes it's a clown in a big suit and it gives you a big laugh. And sometimes that clown is pretty scary and completely petrifies you. But in both cases, I think what it does produce is a pretty big surge of chemistry through our body and emotion. And it's something that allows us to turn, to pivot, and perhaps to make some different ideas and different ways of doing things as a result. I think it's a teacher is what it is more than anything.
Well, and my point is, for my follow-up on this, and is that it's also, if understood, could be used as a very effective tool by, the control structure, using that particular modus operandi to befuddle people, to disinform people, to misinform people, to manipulate situations, individuals, and subjects for whatever purpose. Most often control, and most often it's very self-serving, the agenda. But if we have psyops people that are able to program particular key tricksterish events within groups, within individuals, within the culture, you could have tremendous power there. And it seems to me that I wouldn't be surprised at all if there were certain elements of the black world that had really factored a lot of this into the equation, and has somehow come up with a way to manipulate people, places, and things and events to elicit particular sussed out kind of eventualities and effects by eliciting some sort of program or technique that is tricksterish in nature to, like I said, dis and misinform people and manipulate people, places, and events.
I think that there's good truth inside of that, and there's some slight conspiracist angles to it as well. I've always believed that we've lived in an age of kings and queens. It's just that kings and queens now are billionaires, and we don't even know where they live and can't see them.
Well, this has certainly so far been a very unusual episode of the show, but we have more to come, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it without any further problems. We have Burnt State, along with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
UnseenNow.com, proud sponsor of GCN. Unseen Now's unparalleled encryption tools keep your communications secure. GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Did you know by age 50, half of all men have an enlarged prostate? This means more urges to urinate, longer bathroom trips, waking at night to urinate, or issues with sex. If this sounds familiar, call us now, because we're shipping free bottles of Super Beta Prostate to listeners of this station. Super Beta Prostate is a non-prescription formula guaranteed to reduce the symptoms of your enlarged prostate. It's yours free. Pay only shipping and handling. Just call 1-800-205-8110. In clinical trials, the ingredient in Super Beta Prostate was shown to reduce urges to urinate, improve bladder emptying, reduce waking at night to urinate, and improve quality of life. This Super Beta Prostate free offer is for listeners of this station, but it won't last. Don't wait. Just call 1-800-205-8110. That's 1-800-205-8110. Call 1-800-205-8110.
What good is a Big Berkey water filter?
We get that question a lot here at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. And in a word, the answer is protection. Protection from water main breaks, E. coli contamination, environmental chemical spills, pesticide runoff, chlorine taste and smell, and all forms of fluoride. Plus, Big Berkey water filters are the original gravity water filter system and most trusted on the market for a reason. Tested by multiple independent NSF EPA certified labs, they are the gold standard in water purification. At only 1.7 cents a gallon, a single set of filters can last for 5 to 10 years. That means big savings. Big Berkey, the one that's powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water. Get a Big Berkey today at bigberkeywaterfilters.com. GCN listeners receive 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit our website or call 1-877-99-BERKEY. That's 877-99-BERKEY. Big Berkey Water Filters, for the love of clean water.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
Hi, this is Tracy Torme, screenwriter producer. You're listening to Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Jay and Chris in the Paracast, and an interesting, tricksterish adventure with Brandstetter, where all sorts of strange, arcane things occurred. In any case, let us continue, people. You were starting an answer, Brandstetter, and we had to do a brief break. Can you pick up on it?
Sure. I was just thinking that in older times, where it was very hard for us to get in contact with Caesar. And there's a pretty interesting story where the guy who's got a fish wants to bring it to Caesar and somehow managed to sneak past the guards, get inside the kingdom, and presents the guy with the fish, freaks Caesar right out, of course, and has the man put to death immediately. But I think that concept of those kings and queens who manipulate our lives and control us, I mean, we live like that today. Take a look at the world of high luxury and high billionaire living. They're living in a completely different world than us common folk are, and we're really slaving away in some ways to feed another monster altogether that's beyond us. And I think that's a real human manipulation that's definitely in front of us. When we take a look at Chris's discussion where he's making a suggestion there's something else that's there that perhaps also could be, manipulating us, I do subscribe to the possibility that there is a distraction game that's taking place. That there's a lot of distraction that's going on. And when you take a look on the surface of, let's say, the UFO phenomenon, for example, when you look at the surface of it, it appears that we are being led down the road to talk about a very Roswellian kind of mythos, that aliens from another planet come down, make contact with us, manipulate us, and take off again. And they treat us like we're animals in the woods that need to be bagged and tagged. And perhaps that's a complete myth. And a total lie and a complete deception, and that there is, in fact, other purposes that are there. And I'm very fascinated by some of those communications that, let's say, come through the contactee experience or even Zanfreda's experience, that what's happening to us, we don't fully understand. And maybe as a species, I don't know if we'll get the capacity to, but there does seem to be another impulse inside of this discussion that is leading us towards creative impulses, to try to understand what's taking place and perhaps to try to make us into something different as a species in terms of what we pursue and what we glorify and what we decide to pay homage to, because the things we pay homage to are pretty thin right now. And I think it's going to be pretty sad when archaeologists look back at the 21st century and see the billboards, that we worshipped. So I do think that phenomenon does have this other role that maybe not just distracts us, but is offering us an opportunity, like it's a dualist piece. It's got two sides of the coin, that is offering us an opportunity to recreate ourselves into something different, if only we can find the way to get there or to see what's actually taking place.
I kind of wonder, as we look at everything here, to what degree we're being led across this reality, number one. But number two, 1,000 or 2,000 years from now, what is going to be left of this society, if anything? Yeah. Most homes are history in about 30 years. They don't survive.
That's right. Yeah, we're not a permanent structure, that's for sure. And you take a look at different parts of the world, let's say Central Europe, when you build a home there, you've got to build a home that's going to last at least 100, 200 years. All right, there's a more sophisticated civilization there because they've been playing the civilization game for a lot longer than us here in North America, where we are all about throwaway culture, throwaway society. And those are the real sad parts of us. I think we're losing parts of our humanity daily because we don't activate ourselves in a real visceral human flesh and blood kind of manner at all.
The archaeologists are going to look back at some of our billboards and books and possibly surviving DVDs and notice a fixation with big twerking booties.
Yeah. That's what we come down to, Hooters, at the end of the day. You know, it's pretty sad, but we've also been about that too, have we not? We've always suckled at the breast and have enjoyed that as an image, as part of our base instincts. And again, not to bring it back to that abduction piece, but you take a look at what are the experiences that are taking place there. Well, sometimes they're sexual experiences, and other times they're experiences that are about consumption. And then there's other experiences that are about you're the messenger. You need to go and tell the people about these things. Now, these are all basic primal urges, are they not? It's food, it's pleasure.
Yep, very good point.
Let me just go back to the remnants of civilization for one more thing. We're putting everything in the cloud. Everything is in this amorphous cloud, which is basically a bunch of data centers with lots of computers. And if you want to talk about survival of anything, imagine the potential for survival of the cloud, and the answer is there is none. As long as those computers exist, as long as backups exist, as long as there are archives, all the stuff we've done online will exist there. Our entire lives are dependent, in many cases, being online. Facebook, iCloud, all this stuff. What happens when those computers disappear?
Yeah, we get a big EMP pulse.
There's a great sci-fi story where everybody, of course, is wired to the web and they do everything through the web. So they've never had reasons for schools or education. And then the pulse happens, of course, and people have to be taught again how to read. And the only people that can teach them to do anything were all those people who genetically, they didn't have the capacity to have the web, hooked and wired into their brain. And I think there's a good moral to that story because like Prometheus, who goes a little too far to grab the fire, I think this technology is going to do us in one day if it's not already deeply in the process of it. And there's another, interesting theory around what are alien abductions. When you take a look at it, it's very technological experience and people are being poked and prodded and there's lights and all sorts of interesting things and crazy analysis and what have you. The one theorist, this is a response to life in the technological age, and we've created our own monster that's coming to get us, and we're manifesting that in our own collective unconscious, and whether it's dream experiences or real or what we appear to be real to us there, but maybe it is a response to the techno monster, and I think that's one thing we might need to consider getting rid of because I don't know how much it helps us actually.
It'd sure be terrible if we lost all that data.
It might.
The whole world would collapse. We're so reliant on it now.
Really,
it's amazing how much in 20 years this Western world has become completely just subservient almost and so reliant on technology. We're the only people that really have a chance if all this crashes down like a house of cards are, people that live in the country, that grow their own food, raise their own animals, know how to just do basic have basic survival skills, off the grid. And boy, I'll tell you, it's going to be hell to pay in urban centers.
Well, tell me, what would you rather do? Would you rather be, watching some kind of pathetic digital porn, image on the screen, or would you rather be cuddling with your loved one by a rock in a fire in the middle of the woods? And I think that basic primal natural experience is something we actually need to return to. There's something real and vital that's there compared to the lie that many of us live through that online experience.
Yeah, that's true. We're in that, I think it's insidious. I because it's incremental. I don't think it's a forest for the trees scenario. I don't think people realize how, totally, I guess it's like a form of addiction, really.
It is.
I really try to be level-headed about my web usage, but I find myself really relying heavily on the internet, on, this smartphone that I just battled for years not to get a cell phone. Then I said I'd never text, and I said I'd never get a smartphone. And it's my reality is slowly being eaten up, and my time has been eaten up by utilizing technology. Sure, it makes things easier to research, and you can find things at the drop of a hat. But what would happen if all that fell through? What would it do to the psyche of young kids that have grown up with only this technology in their lives?
And you know what? That's the kind of way we can leave it open for everyone to ponder. Brandstetter, do you have a website or something where we can find more of what you do, or is it the Paracast forums?
Yeah, you'll see me lurking on the Paracast forums, and I'm supposed to be being very productive doing other work, so I might take a hiatus in the near future, but I'll definitely be there to follow up on this show because it was so great participating in it. Thank you both for allowing me this wonderful opportunity.
You can find us lurking sometimes on Twitter, where we're known as the Paracast. On Facebook, there are 2 Paracast fan clubs. The problem being, if we try to merge them into one, you have to kill the other. It's one of the Facebook quirks, being lost in the cloud. And if you subscribe to our official Paracast newsletter at theparacast.com, Chris O'Brien has arranged with us to send you a copy of Secrets of the Mysterious Valley, the ebook version, free at theparacast.com. We also have our premium service, the Paracast Plus, plus.theparacast.com to learn more, plus.theparacast.com to learn more. When you do that, you'll get simple sign-up instructions. Paracast Plus gets you the ad-free version of the show, higher resolution copy, and also the After the Paracast podcast. For just a few dollars a month, a few more dollars per year, the Paracast Plus. Chris O'Brien's site is OurStrangePlanet.com, where you can buy all his books and get autographed versions of the physical print copies. He hasn't figured out how to do that with ebooks yet, but we'll find miracles for you. Miracles never cease. Brandstetter, thanks for joining us on the Paracast.
Thank you.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.